Chapter 179. In reality, everyone's assets had already been calculated and turned into a pile of numbers. As for what these numbers were used for, the Federation government did not announce it. In the morning, Ouyang Shuo called Sun Xiaoye to find out about her grandfather's gathering of scientists. According to Xiaoye, her grandfather had already contacted more than 20 scientists in the past half a month. They were temporarily staying in the Supreme Court under Xiaoye's guidance to familiarize them with the game environment. In addition, Ouyang Shuo also asked Sun Xiaoye to do one more thing. That was to investigate the situation of the Chui family in the Supreme Court, especially the Chui family's reaction after Chui Ingyo's disappearance. After the territory was promoted to a county, Ouyang Shuo gradually had the confidence to contact the Chui family. While Sun Xiaoye was still in the Supreme Court, he wanted to use her as a middleman. In the afternoon, Song Jia called Ouyang Shuo again. Ouyang Shuo's commander seal and letter were indeed effective and successfully moved the Song family. Song Jia and Ruan Ping's marriage had been postponed indefinitely. After Song Jia heard the news, she was extremely impressed with Ouyang Shuo. In front of Ouyang Shuo, she increasingly revealed her feminine side and often called him. At night, Ouyang Shuo went online on time. After completing his routine training, Ouyang Shuo did not stay in the Lord's Mansion, but headed towards the Eastern District. Although the city wall had not been completed in half a month, the county's layout had been updated ahead of time. The Eastern District was the exclusive area of the bow and crossbow workshop, armor workshop, weapons workshop, and alchemy workshop. When Ouyang Shuo walked in the bow and crossbow workshop, the head of the bow and crossbow department and the workshop supervisor, Wu Peng, came up and greeted him respectfully. "Sir." In ancient society, skilled people, or craftsmen, had a very low social status. Therefore, these skilled people generally felt inferior and were very respectful towards Ouyang Shuo, the Lord. This included the advanced carpenter Lu Guangji, the advanced winemaker Du Chun, the pottery master Zhu Yoji, and the others. All of them were like this. Perhaps only the head of the armor workshop, the blacksmith master Wang Zhuan, was an exception. Ouyang Shuo nodded and asked, "Director Wu, how many crossbows have been made?" The structure of the crossbow could be divided into 3 parts: the arm, the bow, and the mechanism. The arm was generally made of wood, the bow was placed horizontally in front of the arm, and the mechanism was installed behind the arm. The mechanism that Ouyang Shuo was referring to was the most important part of the crossbow, the mechanism. The crossbow mechanism was usually made of copper, but it could also be made of iron. It was installed in the guo of the crossbow. In front of the guo was a fong for the string, and behind the fong was a mountain gazing. There was a scale engraved on the mountain gazing, which was equivalent to the ruler on modern firearms. It was convenient to adjust the angle of the crossbow according to the distance of the target and increase the hit rate of the shot. Below the copper, there was a hanging knife, a trigger used to shoot arrows. When the crossbow was launched, the string was first drawn, and the arrow was placed on the tooth of the crossbow. The arrow was placed in the arrow slot on the arm. After aiming through the mountain gazing, the hanging blade was pulled to make the tooth shrink downwards, and the string was unhooked. The arrow was then shot out at high speed using the kinetic energy formed by the rapid rebound of the drawn bowstring. 20 days ago, not long after he had been promoted in Shanghai County, Ouyang Shuo suddenly paid a visit to the crossbow division's workshop and requested that they produce a batch of crossbow machines as fast as possible. The number of crossbow machines must be no less than 100,000. Although Division Chief Wu Peng was puzzled by the Lord's strange request, he didn't object out of his inferiority complex. Instead, he obediently carried out the request. Crossbow machines weren't like bows. The materials weren't difficult to find, and the requirements were very simple. They could be directly forged using iron ore. As for the production of crossbows, they were limited by the materials such as bowstring, cow horn, and cowhide. The production rate couldn't increase. As the crossbow division had to take care of the production of other crossbows, they could only forge an additional 500 crossbows a day on average. Up to now, they had forged exactly 10,000 crossbows. After listening to Wu Peng's report, Ouyang Shuo wasn't satisfied. He said, "Division Chief Wu, we still have to speed up the progress. We can appropriately reduce the production of crossbows. After all, there isn't much demand for crossbows during this period of time." Understood. Wu Peng nodded in response. Ouyang Shuo walked out of the crossbow division and entered the armor division's workshop. It had been 3.5 months since the establishment of the armor division. In early May, which was nearly 2 months after the establishment of the armor division delivered 50 sets of radiant armor to the cavalry camp and 100 sets of infantry armor to the infantry camp. These 2 batches of armor had played an important role in the Battle of Zhuolu, shocking everyone. Similarly, this batch of armor had suffered varying degrees of damage. The damaged armor was brought back to the main map and handed over to the armor division for repair. It had already been handed over to the cavalry camp and infantry camp. After 2 months of pain, the armor division's craftsmen finally began to take shape. Now, the armor division had 1 master blacksmith for advanced blacksmiths, 20 intermediate blacksmiths, and 150 beginner blacksmiths. In contrast, there was 1 master tailor consultant, 1 advanced tailor, 5 intermediate tailors, and 10 beginner tailors. With such a large group of craftsmen, their monthly salary was 340 gold coins. It exceeded the military expenditure of a battalion, and it didn't include the consultant's fee, muqingxi. After the pain, the results were obvious. From May onwards, the armor division could forge 150 sets of radiant armor and 200 sets of infantry armor every month. This was because the 2 batches of armor that were delivered in early May had been forged before that. Therefore, at the end of May, the armor division delivered another 150 sets of radiant armor to the vanguard camp and 200 sets of infantry armor to the mixed brigade's 1st battalion. Based on this speed, the vanguard camp will be ready by the end of July. The mixed brigade's 1st battalion will be ready by the end of June. As for the mixed brigade's 2nd battalion, they would only be ready by the middle of September. In a short period of time, the armor division's production would not increase by much. Firstly, all the apprentices with the slightest aptitude in the territory had been searched. Now, they could only slowly search among the newly spawned refugees. Secondly, the supply of iron ore had reached a bottleneck. The only mine in Shanghai County needed to supply weapons workshops to forge tang swords and lances, the crossbow division to forge crossbows and arrows, and the armor division to forge armor. It had already reached its limit. Even if they increased the number of miners, it would be useless. This was because the territory was only so big and could not be expanded. The only way was to find a new iron mine in the territory. After walking out of the armor division, Ouyang Shuo returned to the Lord's mansion and continued to deal with government affairs. In the following week, Feng Qingyang's Swordsman Town and Di Chen's Handan Town were promoted to first-class counties. It was especially difficult for Handan Town to rise again in such a short period of time after its failure. In this way, China had a total of 7 prefecture-level territories. There were only 3 places left for the top 10. It was still unknown who would emerge victorious. Whether it was Xiongba's Tyrant Town, Military Kill Ripper's Azura Town, Drifting Fantasy's Fallen Leaves Town, Tao Wu's Heartstone Town, or even Dragon Seeking Town, they all had a chance. These 5 territories belonged to the 3rd tier. Compared to the 1st tier Shanghai County, the 2nd tier Danyang County, Luofeng County, Red Blood County, Lingxi County, Jinxia County, and Handan County were a step behind. They might not have the confidence to apply for promotion in a short period of time. Especially Heartstone Town and Dragon Seeking Town, they did not even meet the basic requirements. Military Kill Ripper's decline was within Ouyang Shuo's expectations. In his previous life, Military Kill Ripper was the weakest of the 6 tyrants of Handan. This was because the power that Military Kill Ripper represented had a natural flaw. They were a group that wandered in the gray area. Once their assets were frozen in reality, the nobles that they were on good terms with would no longer care about them. Then, they were like a chamber pot that was abandoned after it was no longer needed. These people were naturally good at fighting and fighting. However, they were still lacking when it came to managing a territory. In this week, Pool Town became the brightest spot in the entire territory. There was a middle-sized tribe and 4 small-sized tribes that had settled in Pool Town. This meant that the 3 tribes that were hesitating previously had all decided to leave the mountain. In addition to the initial small-sized tribe, Pool Town had an additional 14,000 people in an instant. In the southern region, of the mountain barbarian tribes that had cooperated with Shanghai County, only 2 middle-sized tribes and 4 small-sized tribes were left in the mountains, including the Xianyao tribe. Other than the Xianyao tribe and the 3 small-sized tribes that relied on the Wolf Mountain mine, the remaining middle-sized and small-sized tribes were all stubborn. It would be difficult to convince them to leave the mountain in a short period of time. The arrival of the mountain barbarians allowed the population of Pool Town to exceed 20,000 people. It was directly upgraded by 2 levels and was promoted to a second-class county. Zhao Daxian was also naturally appointed as the county magistrate of Pool District. The ambitious Zhao Daxian threw out a plan for 400,000 mu of farmland. In Zhao Daxian's plan, Pool District would rush to open up 380,000 mu of farmland before August, increasing the size of the farmland in Pool District to 400,000 mu. Based on an average of 10 mu of land per person, 400,000 mu would require 40,000 farmers to work. At the very most, there were less than 20,000 farmers in Pool District. Moreover, more than half of them were farmers like the mountain barbarians who were new to farming. Excluding the elderly and children, the actual labor force would be even smaller. Looking at it, the target of 400,000 mu seemed to be a little reckless and exaggerated. In reality, Zhao Daxian had his own plans. Pool District was using a silver-level village creation token, which increased the number of refugees attracted by 40%. This meant that 280 refugees could be spawned every day at the county level, and 8,400 refugees could be spawned every month. There was still more than a month before the second rice harvest at the beginning of August. In other words, as long as they could get through this difficult period of 1.5 months, the population of Pool District would exceed the 40,000 mark by mid-September. From Zhao Daxian's point of view, it was worth it to work a little harder at the beginning in exchange for half a year's harvest. Since Zhao Daxian had calculated it so clearly, Ouyang Shua had no reason to disagree. To be continued. Chapter 180. On the 24th day of the 6th month of the first year of Gaia, the second bandit suppression operation in Shanghai County finally came to an end. Compared to the first time, the second bandit suppression operation was 3 times larger, so the harvest was naturally more bountiful. They obtained a total of 5,400 gold coins, 5,500 captives, and a large amount of rations, supplies, and weapons. Most importantly, they were lucky enough to obtain a technical manual from this bandit extermination mission. Ladder Manufacturing Technique Manual. After use, the user will automatically master the ladder manufacturing technique. Ouyang Shua had witnessed the power of the ladder when the bandits attacked the city. He naturally coveted such a powerful siege weapon. Ouyang Shua handed the ladder manufacturing manual to the Combat Readiness Division, which was responsible for organizing the craftsmen to study it and create a finished product as soon as possible. Ouyang Shua did not forget that there was still a group of bandits waiting for him to take care of in the southern pass. The ladder was undoubtedly a godsend. Otherwise, there was really no other way to deal with the impregnable pass. According to Shi Wansui, they encountered a tough nut to crack in this operation. It was a high-level bandit camp with more than 3,000 bandits. Among them, there were more than 500 elite bandits and 1,500 ordinary bandits. Fortunately, the mixed brigade, which had been established for more than a month, had experienced many battles and accumulated rich experience in fighting bandits. The various battalions cooperated well with each other. In addition to the 1st Battalion of the Mixed Brigade, which was the trump card of the front, there were already 4 platoons equipped with infantry armor. Their defense was astonishing, like an iron bucket. They finally took down the bandit camp without any mishaps. In this battle alone, the Mixed Brigade lost more than 100 people. One had to know that the Mixed Brigade only lost a total of 300 people in the 2 large-scale bandit suppression operations. It could be seen how intense the battle was back then. In fact, at the county level, the bandits basically could not pose too much of a threat to the territory. This was because the size of the bandits was limited. The high-level bandit camp was already the limit. In the wilderness, there were very few targets that could be plundered. When a large number of bandits gathered together, they could only starve. Facing a well-equipped regular army like the Mixed Brigade, the bandit camp could not fight back. It was precisely because of this that Ouyang Shua did not participate in the bandit suppression operations after being promoted to a county level. He directly left it to Shi Wansui to handle. Ouyang Shua sent the remaining 4,500 captives to Friendship Town to help Friendship Town rise to the rank of a Class 1 county, with the exception of 1,000 who were selected to join the reserve forces. Among the 3 subsidiary territories, Friendship Town was the slowest to develop. Ouyang Shua really couldn't bear to see this happen, nor was he willing to favor one over the other. Zhou Haichun was appointed as the county magistrate. Zhou Haichun was naturally moved to tears by the Lord's trust. Of the 3 subsidiary territories, he was the only one who did nothing, so he naturally felt guilty and felt that he had let the Lord down. Ouyang Shua didn't say anything and just asked him to continue diligently. At the same time, Ouyang Shua ordered Lei Sun, who was in charge of gathering information about the nomadic tribes, to speed up the process of gathering information. At the same time, he sent a letter to Sun Tangjiao, who had just been promoted to the 2nd Battalion of the Vanguard Battalion, asking him to step up the training of the new recruits and ensure that the newly formed cavalry battalion could be put to use at any time. Ouyang Shua had intentionally allowed Sun Tangjiao to take part in the bandit suppression operation that had just ended. He was consciously tempering the troops and striving to form a fighting force as soon as possible. Generally speaking, a battalion of soldiers had to reach the 5th rank on average to be considered qualified. Otherwise, in Ouyang Shua's eyes, those below the 5th rank were just recruits. At the same time, in order to strengthen the 2nd Battalion of the Vanguard Battalion, after a month of observation, Ouyang Shua appointed the 2nd leader of the Shadow Cavalry, who had been attacked by the bandits, as the 2nd Battalion's deputy battalion commander. Although the Shadow Cavalry had led 1,000 cavalrymen when the bandits attacked the city, he was now only a deputy battalion commander. It seemed like he had been demoted by 2 ranks. But for a surrendered general, this was already considered preferential treatment. Of course, on the other hand, it was also because Sun Tangjiao's ability wasn't inferior to the Shadow Cavalry's. In addition, with his qualifications, Sun Tangjiao would naturally be promoted first. Moreover, according to the pace of Shanghai County's army expansion, as long as the Shadow Cavalry performed outstandingly, were loyal, and at the same time made contributions to Shanghai County, it was only a matter of time before they were promoted to battalion commander. The 5,400 gold coins seized from the bandits, plus the 7,600 gold coins handed over from the Wolf Mountain Mine and the North Twilight Saltworks in the first half of June, amounted to a total of 13,000 gold coins. Among them, the financial subsidies allocated to the 3 subsidiary territories amounted to 2,500 gold coins. The architectural blueprints of the Level 2 county's basic buildings cost 2,000 gold coins. The North Sea Fleet's 3rd Battalion and the 2nd Cavalry Battalion of the North City Barracks cost 1,250 gold coins, and the Mixed Brigade's casualties cost 250 gold coins to replenish, leaving him with 7,000 gold coins. Ouyang Shua didn't deal with the remaining 7,000 gold coins immediately. Instead, he planned to wait until the second half of June's earnings were tabulated before he made a unified arrangement. In the afternoon, Shanghai County's conference hall. After the bandit suppression, Ouyang Shua officially started to attack the surrounding players' territories. According to the military office's deployment, this operation was codenamed Lightning. It was to quickly uproot a total of 8 players' territories on the east and west sides with lightning speed. For this, Shanghai County didn't hesitate to mobilize the army. Operation Lightning was divided into 2 routes, east and west, and they moved together. There were only 3 players' territories on the east route. They were under the command of Shanghai County City Defense Camp, Pool Water County City Defense Camp, Friendship County City Defense Camp, and the 2nd Vanguard Battalion. The military office's Gu Hongliang was the commander of the East Route. The 4 battalion commanders of the East Route were not troublemakers, and Gu Hongliang would be able to command them with ease. Aside from this, Ouyang Shua also wanted to use this opportunity to train the city defense camp's coordination and long-distance marching ability. Given Shanghai County's development, passively defending was not Ouyang Shua's goal. Taking the initiative to attack was his style. Hence, Ouyang Shua didn't want the city defense camp to stay in the city, slowly deteriorating and losing their combat strength. He needed to pull them out from time to time and throw them into actual combat to maintain their morale and bravery. There were 5 players' territories on the West Route, and the Mixed Brigade was in charge of them. Shi Wansui was the commander of the West Route. According to the military office's feedback, the target territory did not have any decent city walls. Hence, Ouyang Shua didn't mobilize the Divine Strategy Battalion this time. This time, Shanghai County mobilized all its troops, and the scale of this operation was even greater than when they were suppressing bandits. However, their target was a level 3 village that was not even as strong as a high-level bandit camp. Naturally, there were other considerations. Speed was the core of this lightning-fast operation. They wanted to take down 8 territories at the same time, catching the other party off guard. Before they set off, Ouyang Shua specifically instructed them not to delay the other party after they arrived at the other party's village. Instead, they should charge straight in and take down the other party's residence to complete the occupation mission. After a player's territory was occupied, all the players in the territory would automatically be teleported to the nearby system capital city. Naturally, the players in Lianzhou Basin would be teleported to Dali. If the players died during the occupation, they would revive at the Reincarnation Hall in the system capital city. Hence, to resolve the battle quickly and efficiently, the armies from the east and west would set off the next morning. They would march to the borders of the territories and set up camp. The next morning, they would charge into the other party's territory, catching them off guard. At that time, many players might not even be online and wouldn't know who the enemy was. This was the effect Ouyang Shua wanted. If these 8 territories knew that Shanghai County was the one who destroyed them, they would announce it on the forum. It would definitely cause the other lords of Lianzhou Basin to band together. This was not an outcome that Ouyang Shua wanted to see. Only when they didn't know who the enemy was would the feudal lords suspect each other and not point their fingers at Shanghai County. Ouyang Shua was raising venomous insects, but he didn't want the venomous insects to band together. Raising venomous insects meant letting the venomous insects kill each other, leaving behind the strongest one. After deciding on the strategy, the battalions returned to their camps to prepare for tomorrow's supplies. On the 25th of June, the army set off. The Mixed Brigade set off from the West Camp, heading to the westernmost side of the territory. The 3 city defense battalions and the 2nd Battalion of the Vanguard Battalion set off from their respective camps, heading to Poolwater County first before heading to the easternmost side of the territory together. On the 26th of June, 5 o'clock in the morning. For the East Camp, Guoholiang's strategy was for the 3 city defense battalions to each take down a level 3 village. The cavalry battalion would act as a mobile unit and provide support from middle. For the West Camp, Shi Wansui didn't assign tasks according to the battalions. The battalions of the Mixed Brigade were all specialized units. He couldn't let the Archer Battalion move alone. For this reason, Shi Wansui split up the 5 battalions and reorganized them according to the squadrons. He formed 5 mixed battalions that were similar to the city defense battalions, consisting of 2 sword and shield soldiers, 1 cavalry, 1 spear soldier, and 1 archer soldier. The level 3 village's garrison only had about 100 people, at most 200 people. Facing a battalion of soldiers without any reliable fortifications, coupled with a surprise attack, there was no reason for them to fail. At 5:30 in the morning, the East and West camps, a total of 4,000 soldiers from 8 battalions, were like 8 sharp sabers. Under the guidance of the spies from the Military Intelligence Division, they were like precise scalpels, rapidly stabbing into the enemy's hinterland. Level 3 villages had arrow towers, and there were stone watchtowers on the periphery. Although it was early in the morning, the attacking troops still had nowhere to hide. At this time, the battalions didn't think about hiding their tracks. The wooden gate of the village was directly smashed open by the barbarian sword and shield soldiers. The follow-up troops followed closely behind, heading straight for the enemy's residence. At this time, the territory's garrison troops who reacted quickly had already rushed out from their camps, ready to intercept. When two sides met, the strongest would win. The scattered garrison troops couldn't stop the advance of the army and were torn into pieces. The alerted villagers saw that their sons were defeated so quickly, so they followed, not daring to advance. They could only watch as the enemy charged into the residence and occupied the territory. After the territory was occupied, the NPC natives naturally became captives. To be continued. Chapter 181. The lightning-fast operation was unexpectedly smooth, and there was almost no resistance. After the occupation was completed, the soldiers gathered the villagers together and arranged for them to take all the supplies from the village and escort them back to Shanghai County. As the villages were located outside of Shanghai County, Ouyang Shuo planned to leave them empty for the time being. When the area of the territory was expanded, these empty villages could be used as ready-made settlements. At that time, the farmers could be moved to the villages to open up farmland and plant rice. Gradually, the villages would develop into natural villages under Shanghai County, and the vast land would not be abandoned. June 26th, 5:30 in the afternoon. The Eastern and Western armies escorted a total of 7,200 captives and a large amount of supplies back to Shanghai County. As it was late, Ouyang Shuo did not let the captives enter the city. Instead, he arranged for them to stay outside the city for the night. Since it was summer, the night was not cold, and they had tents, so it was not too bad for them. Ouyang Shuo was not interested in keeping the supplies they brought, so he distributed them to the villagers. In this way, they would not have too much resistance against Shanghai County. The next day, the Household Registration Department started work. The Household Registration Department had formed a very complete process for the placement of refugees and captives. The Household Registration Department had set up fixed reception points at the north and west gates to receive the refugees that came in every day. After the refugees arrived, the Household Registration Department officials began to register them one by one and issued them a Shanghai County Household Register. Then, the Household Registration Department officials distributed the refugees according to their registered occupation. Farmers, fruit farmers, miners, lumberjacks, breeders, and other people who were suitable for living in the settlements outside the city were directly distributed to the corresponding settlements after receiving the basic welfare. After arriving at the settlement, Yuri was responsible for arranging their daily lives. The Agriculture Department and the Supplies Department had staff to assist the Household Registration Department at the reception points. Craftsmen, tailors, merchants, and other skilled people were sent to the post house in the city to stay temporarily, and the post house would take care of their food and lodging. The Household Registration Department would issue a letter of introduction according to their occupation. With a letter of introduction issued by the Household Registration Department, the refugees could go to the major workshops, shops, or construction sites in the city to find a suitable job. After finding a job, the refugees had to move out of the post house and rent a house in the residential area. In the residential area, the construction department built a large number of resettlement houses for the refugees to rent. Once they had a fixed residence, they could go to the Supplies Reserve Department to receive their basic benefits. After working for a while and settling down, he had a considerable amount of savings. At that time, they could go to the Bank of the Four Seas and apply for a loan to buy the house they were renting. When he had extra money, he could go to the farmer's market and buy some chickens, ducks, and geese to raise in the yard. Those who were more diligent could also buy vegetable seeds or seedlings and plant vegetables in the yard. If they were a little richer, they could go to a clothing workshop to buy new clothes, go to a jewelry shop to buy jewelry for their wives, and even occasionally go to a restaurant to eat at a restaurant, go to a tea house to drink tea, go to a theater to watch a play, and listen to a song. Most of the refugees stopped here. Next, they just had to live a good life. As a young man, He had to think about his marriage, ask a matchmaker to find a wife for him, get married, and have children. As for military generals, scholars, and special talents needed to upgrade the territory, they would be introduced by the household department officials at the reception area to the household department head Du Quan. Special talents below the gold rank would be introduced by Du Quan to the corresponding division head based on their occupation. The division head would arrange for them to work in the army or in various departments. Only the most special talents could get Du Quan's recommendation and be directly recommended to the Lord Ouyang Shua. Ouyang Shua would personally arrange for them to work. Similarly, the recruitment work was taken over by the military department. The barracks did not have the right to recruit people. The military department would put up recruitment notices at the city gates and various settlements. This way, if the refugees felt that they were suitable to join the army, they could give up their temporary jobs and join the barracks. The household department had already carried out this entire process very smoothly. Even if 7,200 people suddenly came today, it was just a matter of sending more people. Of course, this batch of captives was a little special, because among them, there were some who were loyal to the original lord. Most of them were core members of the original village, either scholars or military generals. Ouyang Shua did not hesitate to deal with this group of people. All the military generals were dismissed and reduced to platoon leaders and were assigned to various battalions. All the scholars were reduced to basic level clerks and were sent to 3 subsidiary territories by Ouyang Shua. Ouyang Shua's treatment of the scholars had a deeper meaning. The county magistrates of the subsidiary territories were all natives. Towards the scholars who were captured, they did not have much resistance. At the same time, it was also an opportunity to enrich the government agencies of the subsidiary territories, strengthen their allocation, and improve administrative efficiency. Of course, this was also Ouyang Shua's test for the 3 county magistrates. He wanted to see if they could subdue this batch of scholars. As expected, there was not a single historical figure among this batch of captives. The highest-ranked ones were only 2 elementary generals and 1 elementary scholar. That was it. After dealing with the matter of the captives, Ouyang Shua began to deal with the problem of funds. The 7,600 gold coins of income for the second half of June had already been collected. Ouyang Shua now had 14,600 gold coins in his hands, of which 4,600 gold coins were directly allocated to the finance department for the territory's financial expenses. Ouyang Shua went to the high-class market with 10,000 gold coins in his pocket. The market had already been moved to the west side of the square in front of the Lord's mansion. It was opposite the location of the teleportation array. It was very convenient to go there. Speaking of which, Ouyang Shua rarely went to the market. This was because Shanghai County had basically achieved self-sufficiency. Other than building blueprints, there were very few other things that he needed to purchase. This time, Ouyang Shua came to the market because after the immigration, the system would welcome a major update. During the system update, there would be new settings for the market. Ouyang Shua wanted to use his foresight to purchase some books in advance before the update. Ouyang Shua first searched for secret manuals. He bought all the remaining gold-level authentic secret manuals in the market. There were a total of 20 of them, and he spent 1,000 gold coins. In this way, Ouyang Shua bought a total of 120 gold-level authentic secret manuals. Unexpectedly, Ouyang Shua found another emperor-level technique. It was the famous 9E manual, and it was priced at 1,500 gold coins. Ouyang Shua did not hesitate and immediately bought it. The 9E manual was not very useful to Ouyang Shua, but to Song Jia, it was a treasure. Song Jia's dream was to establish a sect in the game and become a hero of the generation. The 9E manual was the best technique for her sect. Subsequently, Ouyang Shua spent 500 gold coins to buy a military ration pill manufacturing technique manual and a military tent manufacturing technique manual. Military ration pills and military tents were logistical tools that would consume a lot of resources in the future. Ouyang Shua was prepared to be self-sufficient. More importantly, military resources such as military ration pills, military tents, fierce fire oil, and fierce fire oil tanks would be banned after the system update. Therefore, Ouyang Shua spent 1,000 gold coins to buy 100,000 barrels of fierce fire oil. This batch of fierce fire oil was enough to last Shanghai County for 10 years. They would be transported by the combat division to the foot of the Rocky Mountain Range, where they would be stored in a huge cave. They would be guarded by professionals, and no one would be allowed to go near them. Other than military resources, Ouyang Shua was also prepared to buy a batch of food. Although rice could be harvested in Pool Water County and Yuyi County by the end of July. However, Ouyang Shua calculated that the territory would still lack food for the second half of the year. The fertile farmland in Pool Water County could produce 350 units of food per mu. 20,000 mu of fertile farmland could produce a total of 7 million units of food. The farmland in Yuyi County could produce 320 units of food per mu. 20,000 mu of fertile farmland could produce 4 million units of food. In total, 4 million units of food could be harvested. The second crop of rice would be harvested at the end of October. There are still 4 months left. The total population of Shanghai County, including the 3 affiliated territories, was close to 80,000. It was still increasing at the rate of 1,140 people every day. Based on the minimum standard of 1 unit of food per person per day, at the end of October, at least 8 million units of food would be consumed. In addition to the double consumption of the military, the consumption of wine, and the consumption of fodder, the total consumption of food would not be less than 20 million units. All of this did not include the consumption of food due to the sudden increase in the population due to the captives or mountain barbarians settling down the mountains. This was a situation that was bound to happen. He had to consider it. All things considered, the first crop of food would only be enough for slightly more than half of the territory. This was under the condition that the farmers would sell all the food they harvested. After the system update, the material trading platform would be canceled. If the territorial lords wanted to purchase food, they could only do it through the real-time auction platform or the negotiation platform. They could purchase from merchants one by one. If the merchants found out about the food crisis in the territory, the price of food would definitely rise. Merchants would not be like the system, which would maintain a stable price forever. Therefore, the remaining 6,000 gold coins were all used by Ouyang Shua to purchase food. A total of 6 million units of food were purchased. After the upgrade, half of the county-level granary was filled. Although there was still a gap in the purchased food, this gap could be filled before the price of food increased. After all, July was the harvest season. There would not be a shortage of food in the territory. At this point, Ouyang Shua had spent 10,000 gold coins to once again establish a solid material foundation for the development of Shanghai County. Ouyang Shua remembered that the food crisis in the second half of the year would be a cruel test for the territory. To be continued. Chapter 182. June 28th. The migration in the real world had entered the final sprint stage. All kinds of artworks, unique books, and biological specimens from Earth had already been transported to individual spaceships. Other than that, a variety of production lines and intelligent robots were also transported onto the spaceship to ensure that they could be assembled and produced immediately upon arrival on Hope Planet. In fact, in the second year after the explorer discovered Planet Hope, which was the year 2171, the federal government had formed an expedition team to Planet Hope to conduct preliminary exploration work. The expedition team sailed for a full 10 years before they reached Hope Planet. Coupled with the time it took for the signal to be transmitted, it would only take the federal government a few years to get to know the basic situation of Planet Hope. Therefore, the transportation of the production lines was very targeted. As for the specific content, apart from the participants and the upper echelons of the Federation, it was strictly kept confidential. The spaceships responsible for transporting the migrants were already parked at all the major airports around the world. As the central city of Jiaozhou, there was an airport in the suburbs. Of course, Ouyang Shua had to rush to Shanghai first and meet up with his aunt before boarding the spaceship at the airport on the outskirts of Shanghai. Due to the lack of maintenance, The network signal had begun to become unstable. In the morning, Ouyang Shuo called Sun Xiaoya for the last time to inquire about the situation of the Chui family in Dali. The Chui family is very famous in Dali. It is a very large comprehensive business group. Its business covers almost all industries, and its core business is silverware and banks. Sun Xiaoya said on the phone, "It is indeed, as you said, the eldest daughter of the Chui family. Chui Yingyu encountered a robber during a business trip half a year ago and unfortunately disappeared. After such a long time, the Chui family has already determined that Chui Yingyu is dead." Ouyang Shuo nodded and said, "Little Yu, to tell you the truth, Chui Yingyu is in my territory. After going online, I will send you a token of Chui Yingyu. You can use this token to contact the Chui family." Sun Xiaoya suddenly understood. "So that's how it is. All right, leave this matter to me." "Thank you." Ouyang Shuo hung up the phone, turned on his optical computer, and logged into the game forums. The lightning-fast operation launched by Shanghai County was exposed in the forum on the same day. The 8 victims lamented on the forum about how their territories were not destroyed. In fact, there wasn't much to say because they didn't even see who the enemy was. After going online, he was directly teleported to the Supreme Court. Not counting the attacks from monsters and bandits, this should be the first instance of a territory being destroyed in the China region. Naturally, it attracted a lot of attention, especially a few days before the immigration. At this special point in time, it was even more suspicious. Although they did not know who the enemy was, Shanghai County was still the biggest suspect. The reason was simple. First, Shanghai County was the strongest in the Lianzhou Basin. It was completely capable of conquering 8 territories at the same time. Secondly, Shanghai County had just been promoted to a second-class county, and its territory had expanded rapidly. Naturally, it was the biggest suspect. In addition, the members of the Heavenly Blade Alliance added fuel to the fire. For a time, Shanghai County was in the eye of the storm. Ouyang Shuo, on the other hand, was calm and composed. He neither admitted nor denied it. If someone stood out to criticize Ouyang Shuo, then that person would be a real fool. The theme of Earth on Lu was territorial hegemony. There was no justice or injustice in territorial wars. It was just the law of the jungle. Fortunately, there were no such fools. Even the 8 victims could only vent on the forum. In the end, they could only admit that they were unlucky. In fact, the focus of everyone's attention was on Shanghai County's sudden action at this critical juncture. They were the first to provoke a territorial war. What was their intention? Was it a declaration of strength or a statement of position? If it was a declaration of strength, Shanghai County's strength had already been recognized by the players in the China region. There was no need to reiterate it. Bai Shaoxing suggested that Shanghai County's action was actually a great help to the players. In fact, he said that Has No Clothes was warning the rookies who had just entered the game that although the players' territories were free, they were not safe. They could be attacked at any time. It was better to stay in the system's royal city. At least, there was no need to worry about safety. Bai Shaoxing's argument was supported by many people. Many rookies who had just entered the game began to reconsider the pros and cons of joining the players' territories. During the process of weighing the pros and cons, another argument was thrown out. Someone suggested that there was actually a way to get the best of both worlds. That was to join a strong territory, such as one of the top 10 territories in the China region. This way, there would be fewer restrictions and there would be a guarantee of safety. Ouyang Shuo was silent. He did not know if this argument was just a coincidence or if someone was adding fuel to the fire behind the scenes. It was most likely Lord Chunxin and the others. The migration in the real world had suddenly shaved away their foundation. At this time, Lord Chunxin and the others naturally hoped to use the advantages they had obtained in the early stages to attract enough outstanding players to settle in their territories. This would offset the weakening in the real world. Although Shanghai County had indirectly benefited from this argument, Ouyang Shuo did not feel that there was anything to be happy about. From the beginning of the establishment of the territory, he had already decided that the territory would not accept players on a large scale. In the afternoon, Ouyang Shuo brought Binger to the cemetery to sweep his parents' graves for the last time. It was also a farewell. The next morning, Ouyang Shuo would bring Binger to Magic City to meet up with his aunt. There were too many migrants. There were no less than 4 million people in Magic City alone. For this reason, the federal government had parked 2 large spaceships at Magic City Spaceport. Each spaceship could carry 2 million passengers. Of course, these spaceships had been specially modified. Every passenger occupied a very small space. Basically, it was just enough to fit a gaming capsule. Before boarding the spaceship, the passengers had to enter the gaming capsule in advance. Then, the robots would send the gaming capsule to the designated location. After the spaceship took off, the gaming capsule would automatically enter hibernation mode. The players' bodies in the real world would be completely frozen until they reached the destination. After returning from the cemetery, Ouyang Shuo started to pack his luggage with Binger. In fact, he was considering the most precious and memorable items. The other daily necessities would be distributed by the federal government. In the end, Ouyang Shuo chose a photo frame. It was a family photo taken when his parents were still alive. At that time, Binger was still a little girl. She had been very cute since she was young. As for Binger, she chose a doll. The doll was a little shabby, but Binger treasured it because it was a birthday gift from her father. At night, Ouyang Shuo logged into the game as usual. During breakfast, Ouyang Shuo looked at Yu and said, "You come to my office in the morning. I have something to discuss with you." Okay. Yu thought it was work-related and did not mind. At 10 in the morning, Yu came to Ouyang Shuo's office. Ouyang Shuo invited Yu to sit down. He organized his words in his mind and said, You know that I'm not the same as you. I have some special methods to contact the outside world." Yu nodded and said, "I know. I have a friend in the Supreme Court. 2 days ago, I asked her to inquire about your family situation." Ouyang Shuo continued. Yu's heart suddenly twitched. She said with difficulty, "And then? Did my family think that I died in the wilderness?" Ouyang Shuo nodded. "That's right. Don't be sad. This is also human nature. After all, under those circumstances, there was no news from you for half a year. It's normal for them to make such a judgment. Big brother, you don't have to comfort me. I understand." Yu tried hard to calm her emotions. "How about this? In order for my friend to contact your family, I need a keepsake from you. It would be best if you can attach a letter in your own hand. This is my plan. When your family is sure that you're still alive, we can use the high-class markets negotiation platform to contact the Chui family. What do you think?" Ouyang Shuo pretended to be calm. In fact, Ouyang Shuo had his own selfish reasons for saying this. If Ouyang Shuo was willing, he could have found a territory near the Supreme Court and formed an alliance with them after opening the teleportation array. He would then have Yu teleport to this territory and have the territory arrange troops to escort Yu all the way to Dali so that she could reunite with her family. Ouyang Shuo naturally had his own reasons for not doing this. First, he didn't want to treat the alliance as a game. The members of the Shanghai Alliance had strict selection criteria. Although Bai Hua's Lingxi County was in Yunnan Province, it was near Kunming. After expanding the game map by 10 times, Kunming was more than 3,000 kilometers away from Dali. Even with the speed of the Cyan Beetle horse, it would take at least 2 months to get there. It was too unrealistic to rush to Dali from Lingxi County. Second, Ouyang Shuo really couldn't bear for Yu to leave Shanghai County. Putting aside the relationship between them, the current Shanghai County couldn't do without her as the head of the finance department. In the future, when Shanghai County was filled with talents, Ouyang Shuo would consider arranging for Yu to return to the family. Sometimes, Ouyang Shuo also felt that his actions were a little despicable. He had completely betrayed the trust Yu had in him. A long time ago, he had boasted shamelessly that he would definitely escort Yu back to Dali when the time was right. How shameless! However, this was the price one had to pay in order to wield power. As a leader, the interests of his territory were his first consideration. Perhaps, only Binger was the most untouchable minefield in Ouyang Shuo's heart. There would be no conflict of interest there. Actually, Ingyu was already satisfied as long as she could get in touch with her family. The platform that Shanghai County provided for Ingyu was also a fortuitous encounter. I think it's a good idea. I'll write the letter this afternoon and hand it to you, big brother, Ingyu said. Good, Ouyang Shuo said expressionlessly. To be continued. Chapter 183. In the afternoon, Ouyang Shuo mailed the token and letter that Ingyu had given him to Sun Xiaoya. Then, Ouyang Shuo walked out of the mansion and began the inspection and acceptance of the second city wall of Shanghai County under the company of the Director of Construction, Zhao Duong. After 40 days, the second city wall was finally completed. The city gate, the tower, the arrow tower, and the other facilities were all completed and ready for use. This was because the two city walls did not form the standard Hui shape. Instead, the ko shape on the outside was aligned with the ko shape on the inside. Therefore, the east and west gates of the second city wall were aligned with the north gate of the first city wall. They were completely staggered from the east and west gates of the first city wall to increase their defensive capabilities. As for the north gate, although it was on the same central axis, due to the existence of the inner city river, the two north gates were 3 kilometers apart. Therefore, in terms of defense, the north gate was not inferior to the east gate and the west gate. When Sun Xiaoya and the rest arrived in July, they would see a brand new Shanghai County. It would be the largest city in the world so far. After returning to the mansion, Ouyang Shuo read in his office for a while. There were still many things that needed to be done in Ouyang Shuo's plan to upgrade to a level 2 county. However, as the immigration was approaching, Ouyang Shuo did not have the energy to start these plans before the immigration was completed. At 6 in the evening, Ouyang Shuo returned to the backyard and went offline with Binger. After coming out of the gaming capsule, the siblings had their last breakfast at home. Baby, do you remember what I said? Ouyang Shuo reminded her. Binger nodded hard and said in a crisp voice, Remember, don't mention anything about the game to anyone, including Auntie. Don't worry, I'm a good girl. Ouyang Shuo nodded and brought Binger out with their pathetically small luggage. They boarded the driverless Airbus that was specially prepared by the Union government and went straight to Shanghai. As for their gaming capsules, they were sent directly to the Shanghai airport through the distribution channel. At 10 in the morning, Ouyang Shuo arrived in Shanghai and met up with his auntie. After a simple lunch at his auntie's house, they took the bus to the airport together. As there were many passengers, they did not wait until the 1st of July to board the ship together. Instead, they arranged for the passengers to board the ship from that day onwards. Ouyang Shuo didn't want to stay in his aunt's house any longer, so he decided to board the ship today. Before departing, they had already changed into the spacesuits issued by the Federation government at their aunt's house. This type of spacesuit was actually very light. It was no different from sportswear. When they arrived at the airport, it was already overcrowded. Fortunately, there were troops maintaining order at the scene. Ouyang Shuo, Binger, Lin Jing, and Xie Yun lined up to board the ship. They waited in line until 5:30 p.m. before it was their turn to board the ship. Under the guidance of the robot, Ouyang Shuo brought Binger into his gaming cabin. Then, the robot was responsible for transporting the gaming cabin to the designated location. After entering the gaming cabin, Ouyang Shuo logged into the game. For a long time to come, he would have no contact with reality and would live completely in the game world. Ouyang Shuo came out of his room and went to Binger's room. Zisu, the maid, lived in the compartment outside Binger's room. Ouyang Shuo's arrival jolted Zisu awake. Master, Zisu was puzzled. Ouyang Shuo nodded and said, I came to see the 3rd Mississippi at this time. Binger had already gotten up on her own. She ran out and said in a crisp voice, Brother. Ouyang Shuo was afraid that Binger wouldn't be able to adapt, so he specially came to comfort her. Seeing that the little girl's mood was stable, he finally relaxed and said with a smile, Darling, for a long time in the future, we will have to stay in the game world. Are you afraid? No, I'm here. Besides, Binger thinks this place is very good. I like it very much. The little girl was heartless. Perhaps she really didn't understand what interstellar migration meant. While the siblings were talking, Zisu had already left the room and went to the kitchen to prepare hot water for Binger to wash up. At the same time, she ordered the kitchen to prepare breakfast. Seeing that Binger was fine, Ouyang Shuo returned to his room and washed up with Banxia's help. Then, he picked up his refined iron spear and began his unshakable morning training in the courtyard. After washing up, Binger stood in the corridor and watched her brother practice martial arts with great interest. This kind of morning training had become a daily routine for the siblings. At 10 a.m., Ouyang Shuo arrived at the Lord's office on time. He ordered the clerk, by Nanpu, to call the chief of the War Readiness Division, Zhao Yufang, over. After Zhao Yufang came in, he seemed a little reserved. This chief of the War Readiness Division had been neglected by Ouyang Shuo for a long time. He didn't know why Ouyang Shuo summoned him this time. Ouyang Shuo sat in the main seat and looked at the reserved Zhao Yufang. He felt a little emotional. Half a year had passed, and the sand had been washed away. Zhao Yufang, who originally looked smart, was embarrassed to take on such a big responsibility. The originally dull Zhao Duong managed the construction division in an orderly manner and was praised by Ouyang Shuo many times. The original batch of elders in Shanghai village held important positions, but they had basically reached the limit of their abilities. Zhao Daxian, the former chief of Zhejiang village, was already at his limit as the Pool district magistrate. When the Pool district was promoted to a county, Ouyang Shuo would definitely replace someone as the county magistrate. Zhao Diwang's position as the chief was the limit. At most, he would have the opportunity to seek for a position as the county magistrate. As for Zhao Yufang, as the territory continued to be promoted, it was hard to say whether he could keep his position as the chief. An official was different from a general. Without the corresponding knowledge, it would be difficult to achieve great things by just relying on experience. Ouyang Shuo passed the Military Ration Pill Manufacturing Technical Manual and Military Tent Manufacturing Technical Manual that he bought previously to Zhao Yufang and said, "Chief Zhao, the War Readiness Division will be responsible for the production of military ration pills and military tents. In addition to the scaling ladders, the War Readiness Division will need to produce more and more war resources. The War Readiness Division can work with the Construction Division to build a military factory outside the city to produce military resources." "Yes," Zhao Yufang replied respectfully. Ouyang Shuo shook his head and said in a gentle tone, "Yufang, you can't be like this. You don't have any drive. Where did the chief who dared to express his opinion go? I want to hear your opinion on the construction of the military factory and not just be a yes man." Zhao Yufang was stunned. He felt a little emotional. This period of experience was also a test for his state of mind. If he could get through it, he might be able to rise from the ashes. Zhao Yufang knew that this was the last chance His Excellency was giving him. If he couldn't grasp it, then he would really sink to the bottom. In fact, when he received the Scaling Ladder Manufacturing Technical Manual, Zhao Yufang already had some ideas. This was because the manufacturing of the scaling ladders required a large workshop. After the redesign of the county, every area had its own clear function. Zhao Yufang thought about it, but couldn't find a suitable place to build a workshop. Since it wouldn't work in the city, Zhao Yufang shifted his attention to the outside. The only thing he had to worry about was safety. Does His Excellency remember the cave where the fierce flaming oil was stored? Zhao Yufang probed. Ouyang Shuo's heart stirred, and he said uncertainly, "You mean that you want to build the factory inside the cave? Did you find a suitable cave?" Seeing that His Excellency was interested, Zhao Yufang gradually became more confident and said, "That's right. When the fierce flaming oil was stored, this subordinate specially investigated and found that there were many such natural caves at the foot of the Rocky Mountain range. These caves were of different sizes and were of different heights. The cave was as big as the Shanghai town from before. The highest parts of the caves were more than 20 meters high, and the average was more than 5 meters. What's more, there were underground rivers in some of the caves. The water source was abundant and the air circulation was smooth. Therefore, this subordinate thought that it would be a good choice to build the factory in the caves. It can be put to use as long as we make some modifications." Ouyang Shuo nodded. It seemed that he had previously neglected the wealth hidden in the Rocky Mountain range. The first place to use caves should be the winemaking workshop. It was used to store the three-flower wine and let it age well. At that time, he didn't pay much attention to it. Next was the cave where the fierce flaming oil was stored. Because this matter was handled by the combat division, Ouyang Shaw didn't go to the site to investigate. He didn't know that such caves were actually common. He didn't expect that Zhao Yufeng was a perceptive person and keenly noticed the strategic use of the caves. Not bad, Yufeng. Your suggestion is very good. I approve. Ouyang Shaw immediately made the decision. If the factory could be built in the caves, it would naturally be the best choice. In this way, not only would they not need to occupy the limited land in the city, but they would also be very safe. What's more, if it was built in the caves, it would be very hidden and could easily escape the detection of spies. Yes, Zhao Yufeng replied loudly. This time, he was much more confident than before. After Zhao Yufeng left, Ouyang Shaw was still thinking about the caves. In his opinion, it was necessary to arrange for the construction division to do a thorough investigation of the caves in the territory. In modern society, this kind of cave would be a natural air raid shelter and also an excellent military base. Whether it was for military production or weapons research and development, it would be very suitable. He couldn't be muddle-headed again and let this precious wealth go to waste. Of course, after the investigation was done, the use of the caves needed to be planned systematically. They couldn't just rush into it. Ouyang Shaw immediately wrote an approval letter detailing his arrangements. Then, he called the secretary, Bai Nanpu, and asked him to pass it to the director of the construction division, Zhao Duong. To be continued. Chapter 184. P.S. Finally, it wasn't easy. July 1st, for in the afternoon. The last batch of passengers boarded the spaceship. At 5 in the afternoon, spaceships took off from various spaceports around the world. After assembling in space, they formed a huge fleet consisting of thousands of spaceships and headed for Planet Hope. The mighty fleet carried the last hope of humanity and the desire of a civilization for a new life as it headed for the vast and boundless universe, heading for an unknown world. According to the experience of the advance team, the fleet would need to travel in space for at least 10 years before they could reach Planet Hope. At 8 in the evening, which was also 8 in the morning in-game, a system announcement sounded. World announcement. Earth on Lu has officially entered the global online era. The game will undergo a major update, effective immediately. For the specific content, please check the official website. Gaia had already built the game's official website into the game. Players could log into the official website and game forums at any time to check the relevant information. This was also the key reason why Ouyang Shaw still had some understanding of territorial construction despite being a solo adventurer in his previous life. On the main page of the official website, the headline was not the content of the system update, but a farewell speech by the federal president, announcing to the people that they were officially bidding farewell to Mother Earth. More importantly, in the speech, the president finally revealed the secret of calculating personal assets. Due to interstellar migration, most of the fixed assets, including houses, factories, machinery, and equipment, were abandoned on Earth and could not be taken away. This also included the loss of many intangible assets, causing many billionaires and celebrities to become penniless overnight. In an instant, the citizens of the world were on the same starting line. When they arrived at Planet Hope, how to balance their personal assets was a very crucial problem. If there was no compensation, then it would be very unfair to those who lost their wealth. This was because when these people were on Earth, they had made many indelible contributions to the interstellar migration work. The future Planet Hope also needed this group of entrepreneurs and artists to contribute their strength to the construction of a new society. After all, they could not let an entrepreneur become a lumberjack. This did not conform to the division of labor in society, nor did it conform to the basic principles of human resource allocation. It was a huge waste of human resources. Moreover, their lost wealth was caused by natural disasters and was considered an unavoidable force. The federal government had the obligation to pay for their lost wealth. Of course, he couldn't completely compensate them for the loss of his wealth. Because this wealth had indeed been abandoned on Earth, it was necessary to formulate a compensation coefficient. In order to determine a reasonable compensation coefficient, the economics experts of the Federation racked their brains and wrote all kinds of functions. In the middle, there was also the game between the financial groups and the federal government. It was extremely difficult. Finally, with the support of Gaia's powerful computing power, the Federation government decided to adopt a universal compensation system. In order to complement the compensation mechanism, the Federation also created a new concept, achievement value. This meant that the personal assets of all the citizens were multiplied by the compensation coefficient. The result was not a new asset data, but an achievement value. Why was it not new asset data? It was because most of the physical assets had been abandoned on Earth. Liquid assets, without the support of fixed assets, were just a bunch of meaningless data that could not buy anything. Achievement points would play a crucial role on Planet Hope, similar to achievement points in games. According to the number of achievement points, citizens could obtain different levels of authority. The Confederation divided the authorities into 9 levels: SSS, SS, S, A, B, C, D, E, and F. Different authorities would be allocated different resources and social status upon arrival on Planet Hope. SSS level authority was unique and exclusive to Gaia. Activating this authority meant checking Gaia's core database. It required the consent of more than 75% of the citizens to activate this authority. SSS level authority was also unique and exclusive to the President of the Federation. Furthermore, it was only available during the President's term. At the end of the President's term, the authority would automatically be transferred to the next President of the Federation. This meant that ordinary citizens could only obtain S-level authority at most. F-level authority required at least 100 achievement points. Every increase in level would increase the achievement points by 10 times. In the same way, S-level authority required at least 100 achievement points. The highest compensation coefficient was 001, and the lowest was 00001. The more one's personal assets, the lower the compensation coefficient. If a citizen's personal assets were less than 10,000 credits, they would obtain a compensation coefficient of 001. If a citizen's personal assets were more than 100 million credits, they would obtain a compensation coefficient of 00001. In other words, a low-income household with 10,000 credits could obtain 100 achievement points and obtain F-level authority. A tycoon with 100 million credits could obtain 10,000 achievement points and obtain D-level authority. A tycoon with assets of more than 10 billion could obtain 1 million achievement points and obtain B-level authority. The world's richest man, the father of Jack Dawson, the Lord of America's Liberty County, Jacob Dawson, the only tycoon with assets of more than 100 billion, could obtain 10 million achievement points and obtain A-level authority. The compensation coefficient was not only related to one's personal assets, but it also took into account occupational factors. Of course, it was mainly targeted at politicians, scientists, scholars, and artists. According to Gaia's calculations, among the 1 billion immigrants, about 200 million citizens had obtained the lowest F-level authority. Most of them were underage and only had 100 achievement points. For example, Binger only had 100 achievement points. Her smart pet, Snow, was considered a personal item because she had brought it on the spacecraft, so it was not included in her personal assets. Of the remaining 800 million people, most of them had E-level authority. There were only slightly more than 1 million people with D-level authority, including billionaires, scientists, elite scholars, and elite politicians. There were more than 100,000 people with C-level authority, including billionaires with assets of more than 1 billion, top scientists, national treasure artists, and high-ranking officials of the Federation government. There were only 500 people with B-level authority, including billionaires with assets of more than 10 billion, national treasure scientists, and high-ranking officials of the Federation. As for A-level authority, there were less than 10 people. Their names were strictly confidential. As for whether anyone had S-level authority, that was even more of a national secret. Ouyang Shua estimated that there were definitely no more than 3 people. Needless to say, Ouyang Shua had obtained E-level authority and 2,000 achievement points. It was mainly because of the 800,000 credits in his account. Strictly speaking, the compensation mechanism set by the Federation government was already a great weakening to the major forces. A billionaire was only 1 level higher than the general public. When the compensation mechanism was introduced, it was resisted by the major forces. The result of the compromise was that Earth on Earth would not do any publicity and would be launched a year earlier, so as to give the major forces an advantage in the early stages. So, why did these major forces place so much importance on Earth on Earth? Was it just because there was a chance to obtain authentic manuals in the game? No, the root of it was the second chance to obtain achievement points, to give the general public a chance to turn things around, to be able to obtain a higher starting point on Planet Hope. It was also to appease the general public's dissatisfaction with the billionaires who had lost their assets but still obtained high-level authority. The Federation government stipulated that before arriving on Planet Hope, Gaia would liquidate the game assets of all players, just like it did with personal assets on Earth. Then, according to a certain ratio, it would be converted into achievement points. Please note that this conversion did not have a so-called discount factor. In other words, the more assets one had in the game, the higher the achievement points one would obtain. And this was also Ouyang Shua's ultimate goal. Through the advantage obtained in the game, when he obtained achievement points for the second time, he would increase his authority and lay a solid foundation for settling on Planet Hope. In addition, there was an additional benefit for Overlord players. According to the information sent back by the expedition team, the area of Planet Hope was more than 10,000 times the size of Earth. The area was very vast, and even if 1 billion immigrants were to enter Planet Hope, it would not cause any ripples. This was also very normal, because in the universe, Earth was really considered a very small planet. Such a large planet needed people to open up wastelands. At this time, Overlord players could come in handy. This was also why Earth on Earth was so realistic. To be able to fight in the game for 10 years without being destroyed by others and still stand tall. Such an Overlord was already qualified enough to open up wastelands in reality. Naturally, in reality, there were no refugees spawning and there were no teleportation circles. These 2 things were the biggest guarantee for Overlord players to be able to stand firm in the wilderness. However, in reality, there were countless robots that could completely replace the role of refugees. As for the teleportation circles, Skytrain expressed his dissatisfaction. As for the management team, the Federation also had a way to solve this problem for the Overlord, and that was the cyborgs. The high-level NPCs in the game all had their own independent consciousness. The Federation could transfer part of this consciousness into the cyborgs, completing the seamless transition between the virtual character in the game and the real person in reality. In other words, as long as the Overlord player's authority was high enough, he could completely copy all the important ministers and generals that he relied on into reality to help him continue to open up wastelands and build up his territory. This was because the production cost of cyborgs was very high, and they were considered half-human and half-machine creatures. Moreover, cyborgs were also divided into levels. The higher the level, the higher the production cost. Therefore, the struggle in the game could not be stopped for even a moment. To be continued. Chapter 185. After Ouyang Shua browsed through the settings of achievement value and confirmed that it was the same as in his previous life, he began to check whether the system update was the same as in his previous life. He was really afraid that he would cause some butterfly effect. 1. Setting of death penalty. Players who died were no longer like before, where they would simply drop 1 level. Instead, their level would be reset to 0, and all their items, except for those in the storage bag, would be dropped. The setting of death penalty was to prevent territories from using human wave tactics. For example, Red Blood County of Battle Wolf had formed a pure player army. If players died, They would only drop one level, but the death of the opposing NPC army would be a real death. Then in the later stages, when the players' levels increased, the army formed by players would be invincible. Such a human wave tactic was inconsistent with the original intention of the territory's construction model, so was naturally not allowed. 2. Setting of teleportation arrays. The territory teleportation array only allowed people to teleport, not items, unless they were placed in the player's storage bag. For example, when Ouyang Shu ordered Wang Yuanfeng to rush to Luofeng town as reinforcements and teleport with the 3 bows and 8 bulls bed crossbow, it was no longer allowed, unless Ouyang Shua's storage bag was big enough to store the 3 bows and 8 bulls bed crossbow in it and personally deliver it to Luofeng town. The setting of teleportation arrays was to prevent smuggling by lord players. That's right, smuggling. Think about it. If a group of lords formed an alliance, as long as one of their members was close enough to the system royal city, the other lords could directly transport goods to the system city through the teleportation arrays between their allies and sell them, thereby avoiding the market transaction tax. If this wasn't smuggling, what was it? If they used a storage bag to transport goods, because the storage bag's capacity was limited, the teleportation cost could be equivalent to the transaction tax if they teleported multiple times. It wasn't very cost-effective. Of course, it was impossible to completely eliminate it. It could only limit rampant smuggling. 3. Setting of the market. The advanced market had 4 platforms: the material trading platform, the special item trading platform, the time-limited auction platform, and the negotiation and cooperation platform. After the update, the material trading platform and the special item trading platform will be canceled. At the same time, the time-limited auction platform, the negotiation and cooperation platform, and the real-time auction platform between players will be integrated into a unified platform called the Super Auction Platform. On the Super Auction Platform, whether it was adventure players, lord players, or the NPC chambers of commerce in the System Royal City, they could complete the 4 operations: placing an order, accepting an order, and bidding. Placing an order meant stating one's purchase needs. To put up an order was to sell one's goods. Accepting orders meant accepting orders from others. To bid was to buy the goods that others were selling. For every transaction completed on the Super Auction Platform, the system would collect 10% transaction tax from the seller. Compared to the previous market transaction tax of 20%, it was directly reduced by half. The biggest difference between the Super Auction Platform and the market was the introduction of price competition. The price of the goods would fluctuate in real time according to the supply and demand relationship. It would no longer be fixed by the system like before. Another difference was that special items were no longer sold by the system, including building blueprints. Players had to go to the platform to purchase items. It was no longer as convenient and fast as before. The variety of items was also not as abundant as before. As for the blueprints, they were only sold in the royal city. Lords could either find someone to purchase them on their behalf, or they could only purchase high-priced building blueprints sold by speculators on the Super Auction Platform. Apart from that, there were also military items such as military ration pills, military tents, and fierce fire oil tanks on the list of prohibited items. The only way for a lord to obtain these items was through smuggling. The setting of the market was because after half a year of development, most territories had passed the most difficult period of survival. Their dependence on the market was decreasing, and they no longer needed the system to babysit them. Making timely adjustments to the market was also a test for the lord players. 4. Setting of the courier station. Players must mail items, including letters, through the courier station. The courier station charges postage according to the distance, size, weight, and rarity of the item. This meant that the pigeon mail would be canceled. If players wanted to send messages, they would either use the channel or write letters, and then mail letters through the courier station. Canceling the pigeon mail would basically eliminate the possibility of player spies sending messages on the battlefield. Currently, there were only 3 channels that players could use: the National Channel, the Alliance Channel, and the Guild Channel. The National Channel and the Alliance Channel were obviously not feasible. As for the Guild Channel, Guild members would wear guild emblems on their chests, so it was also not feasible. Ouyang Shua's previous practice of directly mailing packages to Songjia had been banned. Even if one wanted to mail gold coins, they had to go through the courier station. The setting of the courier station not only made full use of the courier station as the basic building of a level 2 town, but also regulated the mailing of packages to prevent players from mailing them anywhere at any time, which seemed a bit childish. 5. Setting of the timeline. The growth cycle of all crops and livestock in the game will be kept in sync with reality, and the previous setting of accelerated growth cycle will be cancelled. The adjustment of the timeline will also further improve the game's realism. For example, the wild boars and bison raised in Shanghai County would be out 3 months before the update. Now, it would take more than half a year or even a year. 6. Setting of the army. First, the adjustment of the soldiers' levels. Officially, above the rank 9 elite soldiers, the rank 10 to rank 12 elite soldiers will be added. Second, the adjustment of the army will increase the characteristics of the army. Divisions and above can participate in the army trial, and after the trial is successful, they will obtain exclusive characteristics. After the adjustment of the soldiers' levels, the rank 9 elite soldiers can choose from 2 development paths. If they choose to change their profession to a junior general, they will increase their commander. If they choose to continue to advance to an elite soldier, they will increase their combat power. Both have their own advantages, and they are evenly matched. The setting of the army is equivalent to enriching the gameplay of the army, adding more possibilities. 7. Setting of the manual mode. Items designed by players must be verified by the system before they can take effect. They must have the relevant attributes, or they will not be effective. 8. Setting of the noble rank. Above the Duke, there will be the noble rank, which is the son of heaven noble rank. Those who advance to the noble rank can establish a country and be called king. The noble rank requires 2 million contribution points, which is twice that of a duke. As for the update of the game settings, there were only these 8 points. As for how deep the impact it would have on the game, it still needed time to test. Other than the system update, Gaia also announced the truth of authentic manuals on its official website, as well as the method to identify them. Without a doubt, the price of authentic manuals in the game would rise crazily. Ouyang Shua wanted to know how much the 120 authentic gold-level manuals he hoarded would bring him in the end. Ouyang Shua exited the official website, and the moment he returned to the game, he heard a system announcement. System announcement. Half a year has passed, and heroes have emerged. Officially opening the territory leaderboard, guild leaderboard, and people leaderboard. Please check for yourselves. System announcement. Half a year has passed, and heroes have emerged. Officially opening the territory leaderboard, guild leaderboard, and people leaderboard. Please check for yourselves. System announcement. Half a year has passed, and heroes have emerged. Officially opening the territory leaderboard, guild leaderboard, and people leaderboard. Please check for yourselves. The 3 most authoritative leaderboards in the game were finally opened. Ouyang Shua began to check them one by one. First was the territory leaderboard. It was the most important leaderboard for territory construction mode. Ranking, Territory 1 Esti, Shanghai County. How say you have no clothes? 2 Nd, Danyang County, Lord Chunshin. 3 RD, Luophone County, Feng Xiaohuang. 4th place, Red Blood County, Wolf Warrior. 5th place, Lingxi County, White Birch. 6th Swordsman County, Feng Qingyang. 7th place, Handan County, Dichinot. The territory leaderboard only includes the territory above the county level. If the level is the same, the ranking is based on the order of promotion. Second was the guild leaderboard. It was the most important leaderboard for adventure mode. Ranking, Guild Leaderboard 1 SD, Baleful Blood Mercenary Group, Crimson Romance. 2nd place, Morning Snow Rose Mercenary Group, 3 RD, Crisscrossing Sword, 1 Sword from the West. 4th, 18 Steeds of Swallow and Cloud, Swallow Lee San. 5th, Embroidered Uniform Guard, Embroidered Spring Saber. 6th place, Flowing Light Pavilion, June is Old. 7th place, A Thread of Love, Love Not. 8th place, Breeze Pavilion. Bright moon illuminates the river. Ninth place, listen to the Rain Tower, thunderous sword energy. 10th. Laojun Guan, Green Bull Daoist. Among the top 10 mercenary groups or guilds, Baleful Blood Mercenary Group and Snow Rose belong to the comprehensive guilds. They were the strongest, and the various professions in the guild were relatively balanced. The other 8 guilds had their own specialties. Crisscrossing Sword Chi, mainly recruited warriors. 18 Steeds of Yin and Yun, mainly recruited generals. Genie Guards, mainly recruited bailiffs. Flowing Light Pavilion, mainly recruited healers. And Laojun Temple, mainly recruited Taoists. Breeze Pavilion and Tingyu Pavilion mainly recruited strategists who were engaged in intelligence work. A thread was the most special. They mainly recruited life profession players and could be considered the most unusual among the top 10 guilds. Starting with a life profession, they could still be ranked 7th. From this, it could be seen how powerful a thread's leader was. Ouyang Shuo also knew that Breeze Pavilion was actually a peripheral guild of Spirit Rhino Studio. Their leader, Bright Moon Illuminates the Great River, was by Hua's big brother. One Sword from the West and Sword Thunderous Sword, in the previous game, were originally a heroic couple, but then they had a falling out. After they broke up, they each formed a guild in Only on Earth. Sword Thunderous Sword changed his ID because of love and regarded Crisscrossing Sword as his mortal enemy. To be continued. Chapter 186. Finally, there was the God's Domain Celebrity Ranking. It was the only ranking for individual players. First place, How Do I Say I Have No Clothes? Evaluation. Lord of Shanghai County, first-class Earl, has reached the top of the world 3 times, stirring up a storm and dominating all heroes. He is truly the most influential person in the world and deserves to be the top. Second place, Bloody Romance Evaluation. Bloody Mercenary Group Leader, the top adventurer player. Whether it's individual strength or the strength of the guild, he stands at the top of the China server. He is an extraordinary man. Third place, Emperor Dust Evaluation. The Lord of Handan County, 3rd rank Earl, formerly the head of the 6 hegemons of Handan, once ranked among the top 10 in the world. Due to sudden changes in the world, he fell from grace and was able to rise again. He is indeed worthy of the name of the brave. Fourth place, Qingyang Feng Evaluation. Lord of Jinxia County, sect leader of Green Sun Sword Sect, 3rd rank Earl, founder of the first sect in China region, holds 2 positions, top in both civil and military affairs. Note, the WinCloud celebrity list only records the most influential people. Those who are not heroes of the age are not allowed to enter this list. The WinCloud celebrity list was one of the strictest lists. Currently, it only recorded 4 people. Every person who made it onto the leaderboard would not only receive an official evaluation, but they would also receive additional rewards. It could be said that they had gained both fame and fortune. As expected, the sound of the system's notification entered Ouyang Shua's ears. System notice. Congratulations to player. Not have clothes for reaching the top of the God's Domain Celebrity Ranking Board. Favorability with historical characters increased by 10, rewarding 10,000 reputation points. This was the highest amount of reputation points Ouyang Shua had ever received. After checking the rankings, Ouyang Shua finally had time to contact his aunt, Sun Xia, Song Jia, and Luimo. Unfortunately, because of the system update, he could no longer send messenger pigeons. He could only return to his office and write letters to the 4 of them. Ouyang Shua didn't say much to his aunt. He only invited her and Xie Xiyun to Shanghai County as guests. In a letter he wrote to Sun Xiaoye, Ouyang Shua informed her of his identity and asked her to report the name list of her grandfather and the scientists her grandfather had gathered to him so that he could add the name list to the transmission array. Other than that, members of the Falling Moon Society who were willing to settle down in Shanghai County could also submit a name list. At the end of the letter, Ouyang Shua also inquired about Sun Xiaoye's contact with the Chui family. He instructed Sun Xiaoye to make sure that the Chui family was contacted before teleporting over. In the letter to Song Jia, Ouyang Shuo not only informed her of his identity, but also mentioned the cooperation between Shanghai County and Heavenly Frost Town. Ouyang Shuo said frankly that he could not accept Heavenly Frost Town into the Mountain and Sea Alliance for the time being. However, Mountain and Sea County could enter into a unilateral alliance with Heavenly Frost Town, and Heavenly Frost Town would also have priority in purchasing weapons and equipment. Ouyang Shuo could be considered to have put in a lot of effort. He didn't want to abuse his power for personal gain, but he also had to fulfill his promise to Songwen. He didn't want to go back on his words. Ouyang Shuo directly added Lu Mo's ID, bullet out, to the teleportation circle so that he could teleport over as soon as possible. Of course, it would be best to bring his family along. In reality, Ouyang Shuo had spoken to Lu Mo a few times. He knew that Lu Mo had gone home to reunite with his parents after Ouyang Shuo's persuasion. They were probably playing together now. After writing the letter, Ouyang Shuo called the concierge and asked him to send the letter through the courier station. After the county was renovated, the courier station was moved to the north gate of the second city wall. It was 5 kilometers away from the Lord's mansion, so Ouyang Shuo wouldn't go there himself. As for the cost of sending the letter, it was only 1 or 2 silver coins. When the concierge returned, he could just go to Zisu to collect it. On the second day after Zisu arrived at the Lord's mansion, Si Qin, under Ing Yu's instructions, handed over the position of the jewelry shop's shopkeeper to Zisu. Zisu, in turn, became the manager of the Lord's mansion. When Ouyang Shuo found out, he didn't mistreat Si Qin. He bought the cosmetic shop and gave it to Si Qin to manage. Of course, whether it was the jewelry shop or the cosmetic shop, they all belonged to the Lord's mansion. In other words, it was Ouyang Shuo's private property. The profits were all used for the Lord's mansion's daily expenses. It didn't belong to any servant girl. Jianya, Snow Rose Mercenary Group's base. Lin Jing accepted the letter delivered by the postman. Mian grinned. Not far away, Xie Yun asked curiously, Jing, who wrote you this letter? Take a guess. Xie Yun's brows furrowed. That nephew of yours? Smart. Xie Yun shook her head and said, Now can you tell me who your nephew is? Lin Jing was in a good mood. She smiled and said, Who do you think is the most famous person in China? Who is the most famous? Xie Yun thought for a moment and said, Right now, the most famous person should be the Lord of Shanghai County, not saying that he has no clothes. Xie Yun was shocked. Her eyes widened and she stuttered. This kind of situation was really rare for the Ice Queen. Jing, you can't tell me that not saying that he has no clothes is your nephew. Lin Jing was still heartless. She snapped her fingers and didn't act like a lady at all. Bingo. Correct. F*CKU. Xie Yun was completely speechless. I was wondering why you and your nephew have been so secretive lately. When you arrived in Shanghai, you didn't even stop for a moment and immediately boarded the ship. So you really are a giant crocodile. Lin Jing opened the letter and glanced at it. She smiled and said, No matter what, he's a powerful foreign aid for Snow Rose, isn't he? You should know that Xiao Shuo bought 3 weapons and equipment crafting manuals in the first system auction. Are you confident about our cooperation now? Of course. Lin Jing was very proud of herself. Her nephew was really capable. Didn't he see that Si Yun, who was usually as cold as ice, was not calm at all? Xie Yun was not an ordinary person. She quickly calmed down and said, Jing, you're right. Shanghai County is a very suitable partner. Why did he write this letter? Lin Jing nodded. Yes, Xiao Shuo invited us to Shanghai County as guests. I think he wants to discuss the future cooperation. What do you think? Are you interested? Of course. It's the best county in the world. I want to see it. Xie Yun nodded in agreement. Chuanzhou, blacksmith shop. The bullet left the chamber, which was the real Lu Mo. When he received Ouyang Shuo's letter, he chuckled, This little brother of mine is really amazing. Lu Mo put down the letter and said to the blacksmith shop's shopkeeper, Shopkeeper, I want to resign. Resign? Young man, how long have you been working? Don't bite off more than you can chew. Don't think that you'll become arrogant just because you've learned some superficial knowledge. The shopkeeper's words were a little harsh. Lu Mo didn't mind. He waved his hand. Shopkeeper, you don't have to persuade me. I won't ask you for the rest of my salary. Then he walked out of the blacksmith shop, leaving the apprentices in the shop with a cool back view. Lu Mo walked out of the blacksmith shop and passed through the streets and alleys. After a few turns, he finally returned to the house he temporarily rented in the city. The house was shabby, narrow, and unhygienic. However, such conditions were considered good among the players who had just joined the game. One could imagine what it would be like to have tens of millions of players swarming into the city. After reaching home, Lu Mo immediately wrote a letter to Ouyang Shua, telling him his parents' ID. After sending the letter, Lu Mo smiled and said to his parents, "Dad, Mom, pack up. We're moving to a new place today." Lu Mo's parents were already in their 50s. The two elders didn't expect that they would suffer like this after entering the game. The place they were living in was even worse than their own storeroom in real life. Fortunately, their son had changed his mind and was willing to stay by their side. This was more important than anything else. A little suffering was nothing. Moreover, seeing their son working hard in the blacksmith shop every day, the two elders felt very apologetic. They felt that they were burdening their son. Now that they heard that they were moving, they thought that something had gone wrong. They worriedly asked, "Son, is there something wrong at work?" Lu Mo's eyes were a little moist. Ever since he returned to his parents' side, he realized how much he owed them. "Dad, Mom, don't worry. It's a good thing." "A good thing?" The two elders were still a little confused. Lu Mo nodded affirmatively. "That's right. Do you still remember the little brother that I mentioned to you earlier, the one that I somehow made friends with in the old district in the suburbs?" Are you talking about the young man who persuaded you to go home?" Lu Mo's mother was a little emotional. The two elders were very grateful to this good man who persuaded their son to change his mind. "Yes, it's him. Just now, he wrote me a letter and told me that his identity in the game was actually the most famous person in the game, the Lord of Shanghai County. He invited us to settle down in Shanghai County," Lu Mo explained. The two elders were also a little emotional, but then they were a little worried. If we go like this, will we disturb him and cause him trouble?" Lu Mo shook his head. "Don't worry. This little brother of mine is obviously a forthright person. Besides, going to Shanghai County is not going to be a freeloader. According to little brother, my abilities will be put to good use in Shanghai County." Good. The two elders were relieved. What a simple and cute Chinese. Chuanzhou, Heavenly Frost Town. Song Jia opened the letter. After reading it, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She said coquettishly, "Stupid blockhead, you really weren't bragging." In fact, Song Jia liked Ouyang Shua. No matter what Ouyang Shua achieved in the game, she would only be happy for him. Song Jia was happy because Ouyang Shua's achievements were enough to clear the obstacles between the two of them. Song Jia was very curious. When this letter reached her grandfather's hands, how would that stubborn and sophisticated old man react? At the end of the day, Song Jia was resentful that her grandfather had bypassed her and arranged a marriage with the Ruan family. To be continued. Chapter 187. Dolly, Fallen Moon Society's Base. "Grandpa, there's a letter from Ouyang." Sun Xiao walked into the small courtyard, her face full of joy. At this moment, Elder Sun was sitting in the courtyard with a group of old men playing chess. Upon hearing this, he raised his head and pretended to be angry and said, "That stinky brat Ouyang talked so much on the phone, but in the end, he just left us old men and Dolly for a whole month. That's outrageous. The next time I see him, I'll teach him a lesson." The surrounding old men also started to jeer. Some of them who were not serious immediately teased. "I say, old son, can you still beat these old bones of yours? Do you need my help?" "Huh." Elder Son was so angry that he spat. "Oldly, you're no better than me. Don't you feel embarrassed talking to me?" Sun Xiaoya held her forehead, clearly helpless against this group of old urchins. "Grandpas, do you want to leave Dolly or not? If you do, then let me finish." Say it. Elder Sun signaled for everyone to quiet down. "I want to know who that Ouyang kid is in the game. He's acting so mysterious and made us wait for so long. Sun Xiaoya smiled mischievously. Grandpa, if I tell you, you'll be shocked. So Ouyang is the most powerful and mysterious lord in China. How can the lord of Shanghai County be without clothes? What? Shanghai County? The only second-class county in China? Elder Sun was indeed surprised. Yes, there's no other Shanghai County in China. Elder Sun's composure was much stronger than Yun's. This group of old men had seen all kinds of storms and waves. Elder Sun stroked his beard. This long beard was specially added when he created the game character. He was extremely proud of himself. Not bad. Ouyang is not a coward. Grandpa, are you going to teleport now or wait for me? Sun Xiaoya asked. What do you mean? Girl, aren't you going now? Elder Sun was a bit puzzled. Sun Xiaoya nodded. It's like this. I have to go to the Chui residence to pass on a message for Ouyang Shaw. How much time can that take? We've already waited for a month, so a little while doesn't matter. Little girl, you should come with us. Elder Sun was considerate of his granddaughter. All right, Grandpa, I'll be going out for a while. Go. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Lu Mo and the others arrived at Shanghai County. When Ouyang Shuo received the system notification, he rushed to the teleportation circle in advance to wait. Fortunately, the teleportation fee could be deducted from the account of the Bank of the Four Seas. Otherwise, the impoverished Ouyang shouldn't even be able to pay for everyone's teleportation fees. Ouyang. Seeing Ouyang Shuo, Lu Mo was somewhat excited. Ouyang Shuo stepped forward and gave Lu Mo a hug. Big brother Lu. Then, he greeted Lu Mo's parents. After exchanging pleasantries, Ouyang Shuo invited them to the Lord's mansion. Looking at the imposing Lord's mansion, Lu Mo said emotionally, Ouyang, it's really not bad. Ouyang Shuo fell silent. He naturally knew why Lu Mo would sigh with such emotions. In his previous life, he was just like Lu Mo, living such a tough life, even causing Bing to suffer as well. In fact, Ouyang Shuo had already ordered the construction department to set aside an area in the Western District, which was also the official residence district, and built hundreds of exquisite small courtyards to accommodate these special talents and their families. At 10 o'clock in the morning, little Aunt Lin Jing and Yun came hand in hand. Ouyang Shuo asked Mr. Sven to accompany Lu Mo and the others in the reception room while he walked out of the Lord's mansion to welcome little Aunt. Before leaving, he specially went to the backyard to find Bing, and asked her to go with him. Hearing that little Aunt was coming, Bing was very happy. She brought Shui and Little Black with her. Little Aunt, seeing Lin Jing coming out of the teleportation circle, Bing immediately stuck to her. Lin Jing was also very fond of this cute little niece of hers. Speaking of which, it was strange that the two of them had only met a few times, but they had already formed a deep bond. Lin Jing carried Bing, and asked, Bing, are you used to being in the game? Yes. Bing nodded vigorously and said happily, Little Aunt, it's fun here. There's a lot of delicious food and beautiful clothes. Only then did Lin Jing notice what Bing was wearing. Bing was wearing a red princess dress today. The fabric was made of high-quality colored silk, and after going through the hands of a master tailor, Ching, the workmanship was exquisite and exceptionally gorgeous. Lin Jing nodded to herself. It seemed that little Shuo took good care of Bing. Ouyang Shuo nodded at Yun as a greeting. Towards this uncle, Ouyang Shuo really didn't know how to address him, nor did he know how to interact with him. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Little Aunt, come in and have a seat. There are a few guests here, Ouyang Shuo said with a smile. Sure, who's coming? Lin Jing couldn't hide her words. Ouyang Shuo didn't mind. Ever since the spaceship took off, he had no scruples. It's a big brother I met in real life. He's a firearms expert. Firearms? Yun, who had been silent, finally couldn't help but speak. Not only was Yun's thinking sharp, but she also had a deep understanding of the game. She immediately made a series of connections. That's right. Kid, you're very ambitious. Lin Jing naturally wasn't someone easy to deal with. Ouyang Shua smiled without saying a word. Walking into the Lord's mansion, Lin Jing looked around and said with a teasing tone, "Little Shua, your mansion is really big. It's much grander than our guild's encampment." Before Ouyang Shua could say anything, Binger began to show off again. She said in a crisp voice, "Little Aunt, Binger's courtyard is even more beautiful than this. There's even a garden at the back." In the guest room, Ouyang Shua gave a simple introduction to both parties. Ouyang Shua saw that Lu Mo's parents were a little reserved, so he smiled and said, "Big brother Lu, I'll bring you to the courtyard that I've arranged for you. Let's see if Uncle and Annie are satisfied with it, and if you want to add anything else." "Sure." Lu Mo wasn't a talkative person. In front of the two beauties, Lin Jing and Xie Xiyun, he felt uncomfortable and wanted to leave as soon as possible. Ouyang Shua called Yu over and asked her to accompany Little Aunt and Xie Xiyun to the territory. Bing took the initiative to bring Little Aunt to her room. Lin Jing naturally agreed. Ouyang Shua brought the three of them out of the mansion and passed through the west gate to the West District. The West District belonged to the official residence district, and the living conditions were excellent. All the courtyards were built with green bricks and tiles. According to the specifications of the courtyards, the area ranged from 400 square meters to 2,000 square meters. Aside from the courtyards, the official residence district also had a farmer's market, a courier station, a grocery store, a medical center, a private school, a martial arts school, a pharmacy, a jewelry store, a restaurant, and a cosmetic store. Therefore, the official residence district was a closed community that was completely self-sufficient. Trees were planted on both sides of the road, and the environment was very elegant. Ouyang Shua even planned a public garden that occupied 1 hectare, which was 10,000 square meters, in the center of the official residence district. Today, this southern garden, named West Forest, was still under construction. Excluding the area occupied by these facilities, the official residence district still had a planned number of 2,500 courtyards, which was enough to support the capital city. One must know that during the Tang Dynasty, there were only 2,600 internal officials. Naturally, such a large group of courtyards couldn't be built in a short period of time. It would take at least a year. Ouyang Shua had specially planned 100 courtyards with different design styles. It wasn't a closed courtyard with a patio like those in the south in ancient times, but a modern villa district. Every courtyard had a front and back garden, and according to the specifications, the area was divided into 2 grades, 1,000 square meters and 2,000 square meters. As of now, 50 villas had been built, and all of them would be completed in a month. Ouyang Shua led the 3 of them to a villa that occupied an area of 2,000 square meters and smiled. "Big brother Lu, this is the residence I prepared for you. How is it? Can you live here?" Lu Mo bitterly smiled and shook his head. "Not only can we live here, but we also can't live in such a luxurious villa in reality. Compared to the house we rented in Dali, it's like heaven and earth." It's good that Big brother Lu is satisfied. Ouyang Shua turned his head and said, "Uncle and Auntie, Shanghai County will be your home from now on. I won't disturb you any longer." Ouyang Shua bid his farewell and left, giving the Lu family some space. "Emoer, it looks like you've made an amazing brother. You must work hard in the future so that you won't let him down," Lu Mo's father said in a dignified tone. Lu Mo nodded. "Father, don't worry. Come, let's take a look inside the house." Leaving aside how Lu Mo and his family toured his house, Ouyang Shua returned to the Lord's mansion. The gatekeeper told Ouyang Shua that Miss Lin and her party were in the back garden. Ouyang Shua walked to the back garden and heard Binger's crisp laughter. Ever since the territory was promoted to a first-rate county, Ouyang Shua rarely came here. On the other hand, Binger had become a frequent visitor. The entire garden was similar to Suzhou's garden, but it was a mix of cultural elements from Lingnan and Guangxi. It was extremely unique. The garden was a mountain forest in the city that was filled with natural charm. Living in a bustling city, one could enjoy the joy of nature as soon as they entered the garden. In this condensed nature, a spoonful of water and a fist of a mountain could be used. The 4 seasons in the garden, as well as the withering and flourishing of plants in spring and autumn, allowed people to enjoy the joy of the mountain forest without leaving the city walls, and enjoy the joy of the forest while living in a bustling city. In the garden, ponds and mountains were dug, flowers and trees were planted. It was full of interest and had a profound artistic conception. Of course, what attracted Binger the most were the various flowers and fruit trees that matched the scenery. The fake mountains and ponds were all Binger's playground. The little girl played here all day and sometimes even dragged Zissou and Banksia along to play hide-and-seek with her. She enjoyed it immensely. To be continued. Chapter 188. At noon, Ouyang Shua hosted a banquet to entertain Xie Xiyun and the others at the Lord's mansion. He had already received Sun Xiaoya's reply and knew that Sun Xiaoya would lead a group of players to Shanhai County in the afternoon. The players that Sun Xiaoya brought were divided into two groups. The most important group was, of course, the expert team that Ouyang Shua had been looking forward to. There were a total of 30 experts, ranging from shipbuilding, metallurgy, economics, chemistry, medicine, machinery, engineering, agriculture, and other specialties. The 30 top experts, including their relatives, totaled 150 people. Each expert was assigned a courtyard that covered an area of 2,000 square meters. The second group was the members of the Falling Moon Society, who also brought their families. Before the deadline, the Falling Moon Society had a total of 400 members. When Sun Xiaoya announced that Shanhai County was willing to accept the members of the Falling Moon Society, 350 people were willing to settle down in Shanhai County. The remaining 50 people had already established themselves in the capital and were unwilling to move. As the saying went, those who were unwilling to go were all sent away by Sun Xiaoya. The members of the Falling Moon Society had a total of 1,850 people with their families. Together with the 150 experts, there were a total of 2,000 players teleported from Dali. The 6 core members of the Falling Moon Society were the alchemist Autumn Leaf, the bridge designer 5 Feet, the municipal engineer Drawing Board, the cartographer 9-Line, and Sun Xiaoya's former roommates Qin Ruo and Pan Xiaoqiao. As for their boyfriends, because they were combat professionals, they were only classified as ordinary members. The core members were settled in the official residence area by Ouyang Shua, and each of them was assigned a courtyard that covered an area of 1,000 square meters. The remaining members of the Falling Moon Society were settled in the residential area, and each of them was given an ordinary courtyard. Since Sun Xiaoya settled in Shanhai County, she couldn't teleport back to Dali. In addition, the headquarters of the Breeze Pavilion, a peripheral guild of Spirit Rhino Studio, was in Dali, so Ouyang Shua simply asked her to withdraw the Falling Moon Society from Dali. As a result, the Falling Moon Society became the first and possibly the only player guild to settle down in Shanhai County. Ouyang Shua planned to take all the professional players recruited by Snow Rose who were willing to settle down in Shanhai County into the Falling Moon Society for unified management. This time, Sun Xiaoya rushed over from Dali with a gift that the Chui residents entrusted her to deliver to Yingyu. The gifts were packed in 2 big wooden boxes. One box was filled with the jewelry and clothes that Yingyu usually used. The other box was filled with gold coins, a total of 10,000. According to the Chui residents, these 10,000 gold coins were pocket money for Yingyu. It was indeed a large business group. Its wealth was not something that the current Shanhai County could compare to. Yingyu did not keep the 10,000 gold coins sent by her family, but deposited it in the Bank of the Four Seas. This also became the largest deposit business since the establishment of the Bank of the Four Seas. Seeing that her elder sister's savings had increased by 10,000 gold coins, the little money grubber Qing was inwardly envious. She wondered when she would be able to accumulate so much money. In fact, with the workshop's profitability, it was only a matter of time before they accumulated 10,000 gold coins. Yingyu deposited her money into the Bank of the Four Seas. Every month, she could earn 100 gold coins in interest, which was enough for her daily expenses. If the Bank of the Four Seas obtained this deposit, as long as it was lent out in a timely manner, it would be able to earn at least 300 gold coins in interest each month. Moreover, it was a compound interest. With one deposit and one loan, they would be able to earn at least 200 gold coins per month. This was how the Bank of the Four Seas made money. Yingyu's deposit could be considered to have solved Shanghai County's urgent need. Ouyang Shuo had originally planned to transfer a sum of money from the funds at the end of June to the Bank of the Four Seas to increase its reserve fund. Unfortunately, the large purchase had depleted all of the funds. With the rapid development of the territory's economy, the demand for loans had skyrocketed. The 1,350 gold coins deposited in mid-May had almost been used up. They could only rely on the deposits of individual investors to maintain their lending business. With this deposit, the Bank of the Four Seas would be able to sustain itself for a long time. Other than the 2 boxes of gifts, the Chui residents had also brought a contract. As long as Ouyang Shuo agreed, it would take effect immediately. The contract stipulated that the Chui family's Chamber of Commerce would be the sole agent of Shanghai County in Dali. They would be responsible for the sale of Shanghai County's specialties and other goods. After the system update, the market transaction tax had been reduced to 10%, which was the same as the transaction tax collected by the grocery store. This also meant that the grocery store's exclusive advantage in selling specialties would no longer exist. It would be better to place orders through the super trading platform. After all, the super trading platform's market was countless times larger than the grocery store system. In return, the Chui family's Chamber of Commerce would pay Shanghai County an agency fee of 2% of the total annual transaction volume. At the same time, the Chui family's Chamber of Commerce could also collect all kinds of rare goods for Shanghai County and become Shanghai County's agent in the Supreme Court. The Chui family's Chamber of Commerce's business model was to break up the bulk goods purchased from Shanghai County into parts through their countless shops in Dali. From wholesale to retail, they would earn a profit from the price difference. This was a win-win cooperation. Ouyang Shuo agreed without hesitation. In the future, Shanghai County would sell its goods through the super trading platform. After placing orders, the Chui family's Chamber of Commerce would take the orders. Only when the Chui family's Chamber of Commerce refused to take the orders would they be able to circulate freely in the market. Of course, if the Chui family's Chamber of Commerce refused to take the orders, it would affect the basis of the cooperation between the two parties. This agency model would be challenged, and the cooperation would not continue. In the afternoon, Ouyang Shuo and Xie Xiyun took the opportunity to have an in-depth discussion about the cooperation between Shanghai County and the Snow Rose Mercenary Group. The two parties assigned a memorandum of understanding. Shanghai County and the Snow Rose Mercenary Group had become strategic partners. The Snow Rose Mercenary Group would have the priority to purchase weapons and equipment from Shanghai County. At the same time, they would enjoy a 10% discount. In return, the Snow Rose Mercenary Group would look for outstanding life profession players in Jianya County and recruit them to settle down in Shanghai County. Since both parties were still in the initial stage, there was no way to talk about further cooperation. They could only adapt to the situation. The Snow Rose Mercenary Group was the first force to receive a discount from Shanghai County. Even the members of the Shanghai Alliance and Heavenly Frosthound didn't receive such treatment. This showed Ouyang Shuo's desire for talents. Of course, he couldn't rule out the possibility of Lin Jing. After all, they were family. Moreover, the financial strength of a guild couldn't be compared to a territory. There was a reason why Ouyang Shuo was willing to pay such a high price to recruit life profession players. Compared to the skilled natives, the players had many innate advantages. First, there was no qualification requirement for a player to take up a profession. When creating a character, the system would automatically give the player a certain amount of talent potential, waiting for the player to develop it. It was the same concept as the talent potential of a combat profession. The only difference was that one was used for combat, while the other was used for production. Therefore, the number of life professions among the players was much higher than the number of skilled natives. The skilled natives could only rely on luck and wait for the refugees to respawn. On the other hand, the players could directly recruit them. The efficiency of the two was naturally incomparable. Secondly, compared to the natives, it was easier for the players to break through bottlenecks. It was easier for them to cultivate high-level skilled people who were above the master level. This was also related to the system's preference. In the future, live profession players would shine in this field. Of course, the players also had their flaws. Firstly, many players couldn't bear the hardships and wasted their talent. For example, a tailor couldn't be considered a qualified tailor if he didn't get pricked by needles at least a dozen times a day. Compared to blacksmiths and craftsmen, tailoring was considered a relatively easy profession. How could the pampered players in real life bear the hardships? Secondly, the players all started as apprentices, which required a long period of training. For example, Sun Xiaoya's architect profession took her 2 months of study in an architecture school to become an intermediate architect. The higher the level, the longer the time needed. This required continuous dedication and patience. Therefore, only the life profession players who had great perseverance could bear the hardships and could endure loneliness could become true masters in the future. Most people would be reduced to chicken ribs in the process. At 5 in the afternoon, Xie Xiyun and her aunt returned to Jianya. In the evening, Ouyang Shuo held a banquet to entertain the experts at Senga Restaurant. At the banquet, Ouyang Shuo announced the arrangements for the experts. All 30 experts were hired by Lianzhou College as professors. The monthly salary was 10 gold coins, which was equivalent to the salary of a director in a government department. While completing their teaching tasks, the experts could either work as consultants in the government department or set up a research institute to tackle scientific research problems according to their specialties and preferences. Agriculture experts could be hired as consultants to the Department of Agriculture to guide the Department of Agriculture to improve water facilities, guide farmers to improve their planting methods to increase crop yields, teach pest control methods to reduce crop losses, and so on. Economics experts could be hired as consultants to the Department of Finance to guide the Department of Finance to improve the tax system and formulate more targeted economic stimulus policies. Engineering experts could be hired as consultants to guide the Department of Construction to develop more advanced tools or mechanical equipment, reduce the labor intensity of the craftsmen, improve construction efficiency, and so on. Mechanics experts could be hired as consultants to guide the Department of Combat Readiness to research and develop siege weapons, improve existing ladders and fierce fire oil tanks, and so on. Metallurgy experts could be hired as consultants to guide the Department of Resource Reserve to improve the refining level of gold ores in the Wolf Mountain mine, the smelting level of various iron ores, and the upgrading of smelting furnaces. In short, these experts were a huge treasure. Although they couldn't overturn the system's restrictions on the technology tree, they could use their knowledge to fine-tune or upgrade the various industries in the territory. Of course, the prerequisite for all of this was to integrate these experts into the territory, understand the current situation of the territory, and then formulate a targeted transformation plan according to the local conditions. If agriculture, economics, engineering, machinery, and metallurgy experts were just the icing on the cake, then Ouyang Shuo's core requirement was to build warships and guns that could be driven by steam engines. This plan involved many fields and required the cooperation of many experts. With the participation of Lu Mo, a firearms expert, alchemy workshops, weapons workshops, and other departments, it could only be realized. To be continued. Chapter 189. 2nd of July, 10 o'clock in the morning. Shanghai County Lord's Mansion. Ouyang Shuo summoned Fan Zhongyan, Su Shuda, Old Sun, Old Li, and Sun Xiaoya for a meeting. Old Li was the old man who argued with Old Sunday. He was also the only master architect among the 30 experts. Last night, after sending off the old man, Ouyang Shuo returned to the Lord's Mansion and thought hard about the new position and structure of Lianzhou Academy. The original intention of establishing Lianzhou Academy was to train civil servants for the territory. Now that a large number of experts from the real world were about to join, it was inappropriate to call it an academy. In the end, Ouyang Shuo decided to use the name of the new school system in the late Qing dynasty. He renamed Lianzhou Academy to Southwest University China Academy. Ouyang Shuo looked around and introduced the structure of Southwest University China Academy to everyone present. Southwest University China Academy will only have 3 faculties for now. They're the Faculty of Economics, the Faculty of Physics, and the Faculty of Architecture. The former Lianzhou Academy's Economics, Politics, and Law will be transferred to the Faculty of Economics. They will continue to bear the responsibility of training civil servants. The remaining mathematics will be transferred to the newly established Faculty of Physics. In addition, the Faculty of Economics will be set up to teach economics and auditing to provide talents for the finance department and the audit department. The Faculty of Physics, as the name suggests, is a school for science subjects. Most of the members of the expert team will be hired to teach in the Faculty of Physics. As for the Faculty of Architecture, Ouyang Shuo turned to Sun Xiaoye and said, "The core members of the Falling Moon Society graduated from the Royal City Faculty of Architecture, and they specialize in different fields. Therefore, the Faculty of Architecture will be established with you as the backbone." Currently, Southwest University China Academy only had 3 faculties, but there was a possibility of establishing more in the future. Ouyang Shuo's restructuring of Lianzhou Academy was not a big deal in the eyes of modern people like Old Sun and Old Li. But in the eyes of Fan Zhongyan and Su Shuda, it was earth-shattering. Fortunately, the 2 of them were not pedantic scholars. Coupled with Ouyang Shuo's influence in the past 6 months, their way of thinking and some concepts were slowly changing, and they began to move closer to the modern way of thinking. This was exactly what Ouyang Shuo wanted. After all, if he really wanted to turn these important ministers into biohumans in the future to help him manage his territory in the real world, it would undoubtedly be inappropriate for them to cling to their old ways of thinking without a modern mindset. Fan Zhongyan was the first to react. He said, "I agree with the restructuring of Lianzhou Academy." Su Shuda also expressed his agreement. Ouyang Shuo nodded and said, "The position of principal of Southwest University China Hall will still be held by Shu Shu." Old Sun was the dean of the Department of Physics, and Old Li was the dean of the Department of Architecture. As for the dean of the School of Classics, Shuda, do you have a candidate in mind? Su Shuda thought for a while and said, "Sir, I recommend Professor Su Zhe." "Mr. Su Zhe?" Ouyang Shuo was a little surprised and said doubtfully, "Mr. Su Zhe is naturally the most suitable candidate. However, Mr. Su Zhe has no interest in an official career. Will he agree?" Su Shuda nodded and said, "Sir, you may not know this, but although Professor Su Zhe has no interest in an official career, he is very devoted to the teaching of Lianzhou Academy. Moreover, the dean of the School of Economics and Economics was different from the previous dean of the Lianzhou Academy. He did not need to oversee the overall situation, but was solely responsible for one area. I am confident that I can convince Professor Su Zhe to accept the appointment." "Good." Ouyang Shuo's spirit was lifted. He said, "Then it's decided. The Department of Culture and Education will be in charge of the change of name, appointment of professors, and expansion of Southwest University China Hall." "Understood," Su Shuda replied. "The first phase of the Southwest University China Hall project will be expanded by at least 50 times based on the foundation of Lianzhou Academy. 1/3 of the land in the northwest area of the core area is reserved for Southwest University China Hall. This time, not only will we add classrooms, but we will also add faculty dormitories, separate cafeterias, student dormitories, auditoriums, and libraries. We will also build gardens, fields, and lakes to create a quiet and beautiful teaching environment for all students and faculty. The Department of Culture and Education will join hands with the Department of Construction and invite faculty from the Department of Architecture to complete the overall design of Southwest University China Hall and submit it to me for review." Ouyang Shuo described the future blueprint of Southwest University China Hall to everyone. "Understood." Su Shuda was shocked by Ouyang Shuo's blueprint and was indescribably excited. Ouyang Shuo nodded and looked at Elder Li. "Elder Li, will you personally oversee the overall design of Southwest University China Hall? I'll be the chief designer." Elder Li laughed. Of course. Not bad. Even an old man like me is overwhelmed by emotions. Ouyang Shuo had set aside 1,000 acres of land in the core area of his territory for the construction of Southwest University China Hall. From this, one could see how much he valued education and cultivating talents. After Fan Zhongyan and Su Shuda left, Ouyang Shuo turned to elder son and elderly and said with a smile, "Elder son, elderly, I was overstepping my bounds just now. I hope you don't mind." Elder son waved his hand. "Ouyang, since we're going to settle in Shanghai County, of course we'll respect you. You're the Lord, so of course it's good that you respect us old folks. But the final decision is still up to you." "I've learned my lesson." Ouyang Shuo cupped his hands. Elder son nodded. "All right, us old folks have been idling for a month. It's time to get some exercise. Don't worry, leave the physics department and architecture department to us." After saying that, elder son and elderly stood up and left. In the end, only Sun Xiaoya and Ouyang Shuo were left in the meeting room. Ouyang Shuo had been too busy yesterday, so the two hadn't had the chance to have a proper conversation. "Xiaoya, I really have to thank you this time. Without you and your grandfather, Shanghai County wouldn't have been able to recruit these talents," Ouyang Shuo sincerely said to Sun Xiaoya. Sun Xiaoya looked at Ouyang Shuo with a complicated expression. A scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at in a new light. "Ouyang, you're really amazing. Wasn't that so?" Before immigrating, Sun Xiaoya had always felt that Ouyang Shuo was too secretive. He didn't even dare to tell her his game ID. When the truth was revealed, she didn't expect that Ouyang Shuo was really a big fish, a big shark. Sun Xiaoya had watched Ouyang Shuo calmly deal with government affairs the whole time. He was full of energy, and he skillfully controlled a famous historical figure like Fan Zhongyan. She really couldn't relate him to that nerd in reality. Ouyang Shuo shook his head. "Xiaoya, don't make fun of me. I'm really happy that you're here. You don't know how much that girl Bing misses you." At the mention of Bing, Sun Xiaoya was startled. She said with a smile, "That girl has been spoiled by you. She's like a little princess in Shanghai County. Everyone spoils her, and she even has maids to serve her. How would she remember her sister?" Ouyang Shuo smiled bitterly. "You're jealous. You still don't know Bing? That child is affectionate, and there aren't many people who are truly close to her. Your sister Xiaoya is definitely one of them." Ouyang Shuo changed his tone and continued. "You don't know, but last night, that girl even begged me to invite you to live in the Lord's mansion. I reprimanded her, so you can see how much she depends on you." Sun Xiaoya naturally lived in the official residence district with her grandfather and family. In reality, they had to share a house because of the situation. But now that they were in the game, she naturally had no reason to live in the Lord's mansion. Whoever lived in the Lord's mansion was Ouyang Shuo's family. Although there was a small ambiguity or misunderstanding between the two, they could only be considered good friends. "All right," Ouyang Shuo remembered. "You're all top graduates of the Royal City Architecture School, so you can't just hole up in the Southwest University China Hall. The construction division is currently renovating the territory, and there are many areas that need your help. Let me know a little about those friends of yours. They're all talented people. As far as I know, Shanghai County's construction is almost done. Is there anything else that we can do?" Ouyang Shuo shook his head. "Why not? It looks good on the surface, but it's still far from done. Not to mention the construction of the Southwest University China Hall. Whether it's the municipal drainage system, bridges, or sluices, they've all been delayed due to the lack of professional guidance. In this regard, you guys are the real experts." "I understand." Sun Xiaoya suddenly understood. "You want to modernize the county. Smart." Ouyang Shuo nodded approvingly. "During this time, you guys can observe Shanghai County and give your suggestions. As long as it's reasonable, I'll support it unconditionally." "No problem." Sun Xiaoya agreed. "Also, after you settle down, as the guild leader, you have to encourage the members of the Falling Moon Society to do more guild quests and strive to upgrade the guild token to the silver level as soon as possible. The Falling Moon Society is the only guild officially recognized by Shanghai County. I'm guessing that 1,000 members won't be enough in the future." Sun Xiaoya grinned. "So, As the guild leader, I still have a lot to do. Of course. Ouyang Shuo laughed. You're the future leader of Shanghai County. All right, I'll urge everyone to do the quests. Moreover, upgrading the guild can increase the guild's characteristics, which is beneficial to everyone. I don't think anyone will reject it. Sun Xiaoya promised. Ouyang Shuo nodded in agreement. After Sun Xiaoya left, Ouyang Shuo followed her out of the meeting hall and out of the mansion. Since the system update, the two buildings on both sides of the square in front of the mansion had changed. Next to the teleportation portal on the east side stood a stone hall. The hall was 8 meters tall and square, like a giant stone box. Although it was a newly built building, the stone walls were covered in moss. It looked gloomy, as though no one was allowed to enter. That was the famous reincarnation hall. As long as a player lived in Shanghai County, they would be reincarnated in this hall after death. The high-class market on the west side had also changed greatly. The original market was a combination of a wooden hut and a small square. Now, it had become a giant building. It was equivalent to the small square being absorbed into the building. The interior of the building was not much different from the wooden hut from before. Ouyang Shuo opened the super auction platform and searched for authentic manuals. Just as Ouyang Shuo expected, the price of a genuine gold-ranked secret manual had already been raised to 400 gold coins, and it was still rising nonstop. Ouyang Shuo remembered that at the peak of his previous life, an authentic gold-level manual had been raised to 800 gold coins. That was something that happened in Gaia's second year. Ouyang Shuo naturally wouldn't wait until then. From his point of view, he could sell it when it rose to 700 gold coins. To be continued. Chapter 190, July 2nd, 3 in the afternoon. Physician Song followed the gatekeeper into the Lord's mansion, feeling quite emotional. He could be considered an old man in Shanghai County. He came to Shanghai Village on the second day it was established and was the first senior talent of Shanghai Village. Even the current director of finance, Cui Yingyu, had been taken care of by him. After the apprentice incident, Dr. Song finally came around. He put down his pride and stayed in the medical center, treating patients and teaching apprentices at the same time. In the past 6 months, he had nurtured a total of 50 apprentice physicians, 20 junior physicians, and 5 intermediate physicians for Shanghai County. He had worked hard and made great contributions. When he first came to Shanghai Village, he was a guest of honor at the Lord's Mansion. Now, with the continuous upgrading of the territory, the Lord's Mansion was heavily guarded, and the threshold was getting higher. Not everyone could enter. In the past, whenever the Lord looked for him, he would personally go to the clinic. Now, it was already a great honor for him to send a doorman to the clinic to invite him. In just half a year, Dr. Song had a feeling that things have changed. Seeing Physician Song behind the gatekeeper, the clerk, by Nanpu, quickly got up and said with a smile, "Elder Song, the Lord is waiting for you in the reception room. Please follow me." Before entering the reception room, they could hear the sound of conversation and laughter coming from inside. Physician Song looked puzzled and asked, "Mr. Bai, is the Lord receiving a guest?" Bai Nanpu smiled and said, "Yes, the one in the reception room is a doctor who just arrived yesterday, Elder Qian. Rest assured, the Lord has invited you here for a good thing." Physician Song nodded and did not say anything. Entering the reception room, they saw the Lord sitting at the head of the table and a white-haired old man sitting below him. The two of them were in a deep conversation. "Lord, Elder Song is here," Bai Nanpu said. Ouyang Shuo turned and saw Physician Song. He smiled and said, "Elder Song, please sit." Physician Song cupped his fists and sat down on the other side. Ouyang Shuo naturally did not feel as emotional as Physician Song. He said directly, "Elder Song, let me introduce you. This is the doctor I invited, Elder Qian." Elder Qian was also one of the 30 members of the expert group. In reality, he was a top surgeon. Before Mr. Song arrived, Ouyang Shuo asked Mr. Qian about the difference between TCM and Western medicine with great interest. According to old Qian's introduction, TCM emphasized on nurturing, which was to actively prevent diseases and treat chronic diseases. Western medicine emphasized the word cure, which was passive prevention of diseases. It was good at epidemic prevention, diagnosis, surgery, and rescue. The two complemented each other and could coexist, but it was difficult to unify them. Old Qin admitted that he had admired TCM for a long time, and he was even more excited when he heard that there was a senior doctor in Shanghai County. Therefore, when he heard that Ouyang Shua was preparing to set up the official doctor's office, he took the initiative to relinquish his position and willingly became the deputy. In fact, Elder Qian was more useful to Ouyang Shua. This was because Elder Qian could train military doctors for the territory and assign them to the various battalions, reducing the casualty rate of soldiers. After the two exchanged greetings, Ouyang Shua continued, "I've mentioned to you about the establishment of the official clinic a long time ago. Now, Old Song had students all over the world, and with Old Qian joining, the time was ripe. I have decided to officially establish the official hospital department, with Elder Song as the director and Elder Qian as the deputy director. The government clinic had an official background, but did not have any administrative rank or power. It was responsible for its own profits and losses. It was mainly responsible for training doctors and military doctors for the territory, and at the same time, it also took care of the important task of treating patients and saving lives. The construction department would build an official office for the government clinic in the residential area for free, and the territory's herb garden could also give priority to the government clinic with medicinal materials. Ouyang Shua's position on the government clinic was similar to a modern institution. Dr. Song got his long-cherished wish. He stood up excitedly, bowed to Ouyang Shua, and said, "Thank you for your trust, Your Excellency. I won't let you down." Ouyang Shua didn't dare to neglect him. He stood up and helped him up, saying, "Thank you, Old Song." After the greetings, Old Song and Old Qian left hand in hand to discuss the specific matters of the establishment of the government clinic. After seeing off the two elders, Ouyang Shua had time to open the letter he had just received at noon and read it carefully. This letter was written by Song Jia. Song Jia replied in the letter that her brother had already forwarded the letter to her grandfather. The Song Enterprise naturally had mixed feelings about Ouyang Shua's identity being exposed. On the one hand, they were glad that they didn't rush to unite with the Ruan family through marriage. Otherwise, they would have missed such a powerful ally as Shanghai County. On the other hand, they were worried that the utilitarian side of the Song Enterprise had been undoubtedly revealed in front of Ouyang Shua. They were afraid that it would be difficult for Ouyang Shua to treat them sincerely. It could be seen from Ouyang Shua's unwillingness to include the Heavenly Frost Town in the Shanghai Alliance. For this reason, the Song Enterprise discussed it for a whole day before they came to a conclusion. The Song Enterprise had a large business, and its wealth was distributed among the members of the family. When the achievement points were calculated, Song Jia's grandfather had the highest authority, with level C authority. In addition, there were 5 people with level D authority, including Song Jia's father and brother Songwen. In order to realize the Song Enterprise's resurgence on the Hope Planet, the Song Enterprise decided that all the elders would retreat behind the scenes and only provide consulting and advice. They would no longer participate in the specific decision-making of the Heavenly Frost Town. Songwen was officially established as the sole heir of the Song Enterprise, and he was fully responsible for the management of the Heavenly Frost Town. Therefore, the cooperation between the Heavenly Frost Town and Shanghai County will be managed by Songwen. In the letter, Song Jia mentioned that her brother Songwen was quite like her father, not as sophisticated as her grandfather. Because her parents had just entered the game and were not used to it yet, Song Jia still needed to stay in the Heavenly Frost Town for a while. When things settled down, she would go to Shanghai County to meet Ouyang Shua. Ouyang Shua put down the letter and clicked on the control panel of the territory. Sure enough, he saw the alliance request from Songwen. Ouyang Shua clicked yes without hesitation. In the next 2 weeks, the game was quiet. All the territories and the top 10 guilds were digesting the aftermath of the interstellar migration and the system update, making internal adjustments and integration. The only sensational news was that Xiong Bozbawang Town became the 8th territory in China to be promoted to a first-class county. There were only 2 places left in the top 10 of the territory ranking. In the past 2 weeks, Shanghai County was also busy. The busiest was the construction department. In addition to the renewal of the territory, they also had to start the construction of the Southwest University China Hall approved by Ouyang Shua. In addition, there were a series of municipal projects. First of all, they had to plan and upgrade the streets in the city. According to the standards set by Ouyang Shua, the first-class main road, which was the 2 main roads on the central axis, was 150 meters wide. The second-class main road, which was the main road on the central axis of each district, was 100 meters wide. The third-class main road, which was the branch road on the central axis of each district, was 60 meters wide. The fourth-class main road, which was the street that divided the districts, was 40 meters wide. The fifth-class main road, which was the street that divided the districts, was 20 to 25 meters wide. The road surface of each street was high in the middle and low on both sides. Drainage ditches about 25 meters wide were built on both sides and planted with all kinds of trees that were dug out from the wild. The drainage openings were all led to the inner city river, which was then discharged to the canyon and finally into the North Sea. All the roads were made of the same material. They were compacted with soil and sand. To prevent dust, they were covered with fine sand and finally a layer of bluestone. Shanghai County had no shortage of sand or stone materials. The sand used to build the roads came from the sea in Beihai County. It was very easy to dig and transport. This project was led by Drawing Board, who was the chief designer. Next was the construction of bridges and sluices. This was because the inner city river passed through the second city wall on the north and east sides. In order to not leave any blind spots in the city defense, these 2 places were designed with sluices. The sluices were made of iron bars that were welded with tin to form a huge hollowed-out iron net. This ensured the flow of water and effectively prevented enemies from sneaking into the city through the inner city river. 5 stone arch bridges were designed on the inner city river. The suspension bridge at the north gate of the core area was removed and replaced with a wooden gate. In front of the north gate, 3 stone arch bridges were designed. 1 was the main bridge and 2 were the secondary bridges. They led to the main gate and 2 side gates, respectively. The suspension bridge was removed because Ouyang Shua was confident that no force could attack the core area of Shanghai County. In addition, another stone arch bridge was built in the middle of the inner city river in the residential area and the eastern district to facilitate the passage of the people on both sides of the inner city river. Ouyang Shua planned to build a bridge at the Friendship River, Qiushui River, and the canyon. This would connect Shanghai County, Qiushui County, and Yuyi County into one. This project was led by Wu Qi, who was the chief designer. This series of projects was just the beginning. It would take at least 2 to 3 months to complete all of them. The preliminary budget alone was more than 8,000 gold coins. The Falling Moon Society was known as the 3 Male Gods. Of course, this was a title given by them, and no one acknowledged it. The last one, 9-Line, also carried a heavy responsibility. 9-Line led a team of more than 100 people to map out the entire Shanghai County. They marked the specific coordinates of the settlements, the distribution of various resources, and the river channels. This work was also time-consuming and could not be completed in a short period of time. Other than the construction division, the agriculture division was not having it easy either. The first season of rice in Yu County had already been harvested. A total of 2 million units of rice were harvested, which was similar to Ouyang Shua's previous estimation. Yu County had collected a total of 440,000 units of public grain based on 30% tax. This batch of public grain was directly allocated to them by Ouyang Shua as military grain. There was no need to hand it over to the headquarters. Due to the lack of funds, the resource division did not immediately start to purchase the grain. They had to wait until the end of the month when they had sufficient funds. Then, the resource division would start to purchase the grain. Other than keeping the rations, the farmers would sell the rest to the resource division at the price of 10 copper coins per unit. The resource division would then sell it to the people at the price of 11 copper coins per unit. The price difference was mainly used to offset the storage costs and sales costs of the resource division. They were not really making money from the people. To be continued. Chapter 191. The Snow Rose Mercenary Group had already recommended the first batch of life profession players to Shanghai County. There were 500 players in this batch. Including their families, there were 2,400 players. They were all accepted into the Falling Moon Society and arranged to live in the residential area. Their treatment was the same as the ordinary members of the Falling Moon Society. As a result, the Falling Moon Society had 850 members, which was close to the limit of 1,000 members. In desperation, Ouyang Shuo could only urge Sun Xiaoya to upgrade the guild token as soon as possible and expand the upper limit of the guild members. At the same time, he delayed the progress of accepting players and temporarily let the Snow Rose Mercenary Group take care of them. The members of the Falling Moon Society were from all walks of life, but they were mostly intermediate professions. Some were even beginner professions. There were very few advanced professions. Like the skilled natives, they were arranged to work in large workshops, shops, or construction sites. Their salary was the same as that of the natives. Of course, Ouyang Shuo would not open the 4 major workshops in the Eastern District to them before he confirmed the loyalty of the players. This way, the players could earn money and improve their skill levels, especially with the support of the strong territorial characteristics of Shanghai County. The effect was even more obvious. In the future, in addition to assets, the achievements of the players in their own fields would also be a very important reference. For life profession players, becoming a god was their ultimate goal. Before Ouyang Shuo's rebirth, there had not been a single god profession player in the entire China region. In the context of the global online world, the players could not go offline for a long time. It could be said that they were not much different from the natives in the game. Naturally, Ouyang Shuo had no reason to treat them differently. Compared to the natives, the players' sense of discipline was worse. Some players could not adapt to their roles and looked down on the natives. There had even been fights. Some players were lazy and slack off and were complained to the business department by the workshop owners or shopkeepers. Ouyang Shuo's attitude toward such incidents was also very firm. He would hand them over to the disciplinary bureau to handle. If the circumstances were serious, they would be thrown into prison without any consideration. Once the players settled in the territory, they had to abide by the rules of the territory. Because the Lord had enough means to punish them, these players had no ability to escape the territory. Even if they committed suicide, they would be reincarnated in the territory's reincarnation hall. Therefore, as long as Ouyang Shuo did not release them, the players would live and die as the residents of the territory. Unless the territory of the players was occupied, the players would not be able to regain their freedom. Apart from that, there were other changes in Shanghai County. Under Elder Sun's proposal, the advanced shipyard had been transferred to the Beihai port. Old Sun also officially became the chief consultant of the shipyard, responsible for the improvement and research of warships. According to Elder Sun, the canyon was too narrow and not deep enough to accommodate the passage of large warships. It was also impossible to build a large dock, so it was better to move it to the North Sea port and solve the problem once and for all. Ouyang Shuo, and naturally, Ouyang Shuo did not object. He also instructed the construction department of the construction of a mountain town. In addition, Ouyang Shuo also instructed the construction department to take some time to expand Shanghai County's docks. Shanghai town of county of goods would have Yang City. Were Hai County and in town. Town in town. The most. Yang town of county. Of town. The Institute of Country. The Institute. The Wu Institute. The core members of the Research Institute consisted of the ship specialist, Elder Sun, the metallurgist, Elder Liu, the mobility specialist, Elder Zhou, the mechanic specialist, Elder Bien, the weapons specialist, Liu Mo, the master blacksmith, Wang Zhuan, and the high-level metallurgist, Magnus. There were a total of 7 people. The mission of the Number 7 Research Institute was undoubtedly to conduct research on warships driven by steam engines, as well as guns and cannons. Ouyang Shua's goal was to reach the level of England's science and technology in the late Qing dynasty. Ouyang Shua did not expect the 7th Research Institute to produce results immediately, because it involved a lot of basic research, including materials, machine tools, gunpowder, and so on. It was very complicated. It was normal for there to be no obvious progress in 2 to 3 years. Ouyang Shua hoped that the 7th Research Institute could show its power in the later stages of the game. On the 20th of July, Ouyang Shua brought Gu Hongliang and Shi Wansui to the northern barracks. Ouyang Shua sat in the main seat of honor in the barracks meeting hall. He looked around and said in a deep voice, "Recently, the nomadic tribes have been like a pool of stagnant water. The turmoil caused by the daybreak operation has dissipated. Monk and Dari Achi, those 2 old foxes, are really able to hold it in. The most direct effect is that we have a severe shortage of cyan beetle horses. Up until now, we have only managed to gather enough mounts for the 1st Battalion of the Vanguard. At this speed, how are we going to develop cavalry?" The general of the northern barracks, the commander of the 1st Battalion of the Vanguard, Lin Yi, wasn't very satisfied with this. "Sir, since the trade route is not feasible, then we can only solve the problem through war." I agree with General Lin's view. The problem is how to find a suitable entry point. If we wipe out 1 or 2 small tribes like last time, it might not be of any use. To wipe out a mid-sized tribe and make sure no one escapes the net, with our current army, I'm afraid it will be difficult. Gu Hongliang said. Lin smiled faintly and turned to Ouyang Shua. "Sir, I have an idea." "Oh." Ouyang Shua's spirit shook. He knew that Lin Yi had been in the northern barracks for a long time and had a deeper understanding of the nomadic tribes than Gu Hongliang. It seemed that how to solve the problem Gu Hongliang mentioned was already within this general's calculations. For Lin Yi to speak now, he must have a certain degree of confidence. "This is what I think. If we want to break the balance of power between the nomadic tribes, the key lies in the Sky Order tribe. The peace of the grasslands is all because of the Sky Order tribe's superior strength and deterrence. Just like last time, even if they sensed that someone was secretly provoking the Sky Order tribe, a mid-sized tribe like the Sky Order tribe still didn't dare to act rashly. The root of the problem is that the difference in strength between the 2 sides is too big. The Sky Order tribe has 12,000 warriors. On the other hand, the Sky Order tribe only has 1,000. With a difference of more than 10 times, no idiot would think of challenging the Sky Order tribe's royal power. Thus, this general thinks that since the mid-sized tribe is powerless, then why don't we help them?" Ouyang Shua's interest grew. He vaguely sensed Lin Yi's intentions and was shocked by this general's bold and unconstrained thinking. He said hurriedly, "Tell me more details." Seeing that the general was so interested, Lin Yi became more confident. He continued, "The Sky Order tribe has an East and West division. Each division has 5,000 people, and they are responsible for guarding the east and west sides of the tribe. If we can penetrate deep into the grasslands and defeat one of them, then the balance of power in the grasslands will be broken. It can be foreseen that a chaotic battle for dominance of the grasslands will be unavoidable." "Why do you say so?" "Think about it, sir. If the Sky Order tribe loses one of their arms, they will no longer be able to intimidate the other mid-sized tribes. At that time, although those mid-sized tribes won't dare to make a move against the Sky Order tribe, they will definitely not be willing to submit to the Sky Order tribe's tyrannical power. The best way is to ignore the Sky Order tribe's warning and brazenly swallow up the surrounding small tribes to strengthen themselves. With everyone in danger, a merger war is unavoidable. And this time is the time when the Friendship County Bazaar truly opens. In order to expand their strength, they are not stingy with using green buckskin horses to exchange for all kinds of resources with us," Lin Yi explained. Clap, clap, clap. Ouyang Shua took the lead to clap and said with a smile, "Bold thinking and far-reaching planning. General Lin, after 3 days, you really have to be looked at in a new light." Lin Yi said excitedly, "You flatter me, sir." Ouyang Shua's expression turned serious as he said in a low voice, "Then, let me ask you, how many riders do we need to be confident in defeating the Sky Order Tribe's army? They have a whole 5,000 elite riders. Since they were going to fight deep into the grasslands, naturally, only riders could do it. And in terms of individual combat ability, the normal riders of Shanghai County couldn't compare to the enemy, because the enemy would all be equipped with green buckskin horses. Besides, which grassland warrior wasn't skilled in horse archery, unlike the riders of Shanghai County, who only learn it halfway?" Lin Yi smiled confidently. "Sir, 2,000 riders are enough. There's no joking in the army. 2,000 riders can defeat the enemy?" Ouyang Shua didn't dare believe it. "Of course, it won't be enough with just the riders. In this, I will need your cooperation, sir." Lin Yi told Ouyang Shua the detailed strategy he had formulated. After listening to it, Ouyang Shua's heart relaxed. He was already 70 to 80% convinced. Although there was a certain amount of risk involved, one couldn't have complete confidence in everything if they wanted to achieve hegemony. At the critical moment, they had to give it their all. Ouyang Shua didn't hesitate anymore. He followed Lin Yi's plan and announced the new arrangements for expanding the army. "Liao Kai, here." Liao Kai stepped out. "I order you to pick 500 men from the reserve and form the Pool Water Cavalry Battalion. They will be stationed in the Pool Water military camp. I will give you 10 days. After 10 days, I want to see a fully formed cavalry battalion. Thank you for your recommendation, sir. I will not let you down." Liao Kai's face was filled with excitement. The reason why Ouyang Shua placed the newly formed cavalry battalion in Pool Water County was because after Pool Water County was promoted to a first-class county, they only had one city defense battalion. It seemed a little weak. Secondly, he didn't want to station too many troops in the North military camp. He didn't want to put too much pressure on Tianfeng tribe. As such, according to Lin Yi's plan, the 2,000 riders were already arranged. They were 2 cavalry battalions in the North military camp, 1 cavalry battalion in the West military camp, and the newly formed cavalry battalion in Pool Water County. To be continued. Chapter 192. Lin Yi's plan, codenamed Wildfire, meant to ignite the flames of war in the grasslands. The success or failure of Operation Wildfire was related to the future policy orientation of Shanghai County towards the nomadic tribes, as well as the progress of the construction of the Shanghai County Cavalry. Its importance was self-evident. The military office would work with Lin Yi to come up with a more detailed plan to ensure that nothing went wrong. Ouyang Shua had just returned from Yi County and was once again immersed in government affairs. On the 20th of July, the Cavalry Battalion of Pool Water County was established. Liao Kai was appointed as the battalion commander of the Cavalry Battalion. The fee for the Cavalry Battalion's class change was naturally deducted from the first half of July's income. 3 days ago, Ouyang Shua and the Dali's Chui Clan Merchant Group had completed their first transaction on the super trading platform. The Northern Twilight Salt Works produced a total of 2.5 million units of salt in half a month. According to the market price of 20 copper coins per unit, the Chui Merchant Group had to pay 5,000 gold coins. After deducting 10% of the transaction tax, Ouyang Shua actually received 4,500 gold coins. After deducting the operating costs of the Northern Twilight Saltworks, he was left with 4,100 gold coins. System: after the transaction tax is halved, the North Twilight Salt Field can save 1,000 gold coins in taxes every month. As for the Wolf Mountain Mine, they would still hand over 4,000 gold coins. The mineral experts in the expert group had already entered the Wolf Mountain Mine and began to instruct the Wolf Mountain Mine on how to mine, process, and refine gold ores in a more scientific and reasonable manner. According to preliminary estimates, the output of the Wolf Mountain Mine in August would increase by at least 10%. The technical guidance of a mineral expert could increase the income of Shanghai County by at least 1 gold coin every month. This was the value of the team of experts. They could improve the territory in all aspects. Of the 8,100 gold coins from the first half of the month, After deducting the 750 gold coins from the cavalry battalion and the 4,400 gold coins from the Bank of the Four Seas, he was left with 2,950 gold coins. The cost of sending a player to the territory through the teleportation circle was extremely high and extravagant. On average, a life profession player would have to spend 5 gold coins in teleportation fees. Ouyang Shua had yet to calculate the cost of providing a normal courtyard for every player. For example, when Di Chun and the others recruited players to settle in their territory, they basically chose new players and arranged for them to descend directly into the territory. Only these great forces had the strength to mobilize such a huge amount of manpower in the real world. After the interstellar migration, they would not have such convenience. They could only obediently pay the teleportation fee like Ouyang Shua. This was undoubtedly another heavy burden for Di Chun and the others. According to what Feng Xiuhuang had revealed, before the migration, the various factions had gathered in their territories and placed a large number of new players in order to avoid the teleportation fees. As for the exact number, it was unknown. The remaining 2,950 gold coins from the first half of the month weren't kept hot in Ouyang Shua's hands, and he used these funds to purchase 2,950,000 units of grain through the Chui clan merchant group. In this way, Shanghai County would not have to worry about food in the second half of the year. The price Ouyang Shua had to pay was that he had to spend 9,000 gold coins just to purchase food. Ouyang Shua didn't dare to imagine what kind of price the other territories would have to pay for food after the price of food increased. One had to know that the other territories did not have Shanghai County's 40,000 acres of fertile farmland, so they needed to purchase more food. The only comforting thing was that the other territories did not have such a large population base like Shanghai County, nor did they have such a terrifying spawn rate of refugees. If he had sufficient funds, Ouyang Shua would even consider whether he should engage in a shady business of reselling food. While the price of food hasn't risen yet, I'll buy a batch and sell them after the price rises. Ouyang Shua had already informed the members of the Shanghai Alliance, including Song Wan, about his prediction of the grain market. As for whether or not they had the funds to stock up in advance, Ouyang Shua could not help them. No matter how big Shanghai County was, it did not have enough funds to support 5 or 6 territories at the same time. Moreover, they were just allies, and Ouyang Shua was not a philanthropist. No matter which territory it was, if they wanted to borrow money from Shanghai County, they would have to allow the Bank of the Four Seas to set up a branch in their territory. As for Milan Town, Ouyang Shua was prepared to wait until the end of the month. After the profits of the second half of July were collected, he would add a reserve fund to the Bank of the Four Seas branch in Milan Town. As for the Resource Division's purchase of grain, it had already been settled. According to Ingyu, she wanted to take out a portion of the funds she had deposited in the Bank of the Four Seas and use it to purchase surplus grain from the farmers. The surplus grain in the farmers' hands did not need to be purchased in one go. They could purchase a portion every month, and after they were sold, they would purchase another batch, and the cycle would repeat. Otherwise, purchasing a batch of grain in one go would require tens of thousands of gold coins, which was simply a waste of funds. On average, a farmer farmed 10 mu of land. Based on a yield of 350 units per mu, that was 3,500 units of grain. If they handed over 117 units of grain and kept half a year's worth of rations, they could sell 3,200 units of grain, making a profit of 3 gold coins and 20 silver coins. After deducting the business tax from selling the grain, the actual profit was 3 gold coins and 10 silver coins. With 2 seasons a year, the annual income was 6 gold coins and 20 silver coins. After deducting the cost, the final profit was about 5 gold coins. If the farmers were more diligent and raised chickens, ducks, geese, and other poultry, or even a pig, they could make a profit of dozens of silver coins a year to subsidize their family. Therefore, in reality, the farmer's income was not low. It was almost the annual salary of an ordinary rank 5 soldier. The only difference was that the soldiers' food and shelter were covered, and there was still room for improvement in the army's pay. The reason for this was that the farmers had enough arable land, and it was calculated according to the fertile farmland. Secondly, the taxes set by Shanghai County were already the lowest in history. Thirdly, in the purchase of grain, Ouyang Shua did not buy low and sell high to squeeze the farmers. All these factors contributed to the high income of Shanghai County's farmers. In the past month and a half, Mulan Town had developed rapidly with the support of the Bank of the Four Seas. Using the loan from the Bank of the Four Seas, Mu Guiying successfully established the Mulan Town City Defense Battalion. With the City Defense Battalion, Mu Guiying went around to exterminate the bandits. Exterminating bandits not only trained the troops and eliminated the hidden dangers of the territory, but also brought a steady stream of people, resources, and funds to Mulan Town, greatly improving the situation of the town. In addition, Mulan Town had also built a stone wall, greatly increasing its defense. The privatization of the territory had also been completed, and it was no longer a half-finished product. The private economy of the territory had begun to sprout, slowly accumulating potential, waiting for the big explosion in the future. Mulan Town's current development momentum was almost a replica of Shanghai Town's. A week ago, Mulan Town had successfully been promoted to a rank 3 town. After the promotion, Mulan Town's miners unexpectedly discovered a large silver mine in the territory, which was another source of wealth. Although the silver mine could not compare to the gold mine, if they went all out to mine it, they could at least earn 200 gold coins every month. Now, the biggest obstacle to Mulan Town's advancement was Mu Lanyue's noble title. In the Battle of Zhuelu, Mu Lanyue had obtained 2,500 merit points, raising her noble title from a third-rank viscount to a first-rank viscount. In addition to the bandits she had exterminated during this period, Mu Lanyue's merit points had reached 5,000. However, she was still 1,400 merit points short of becoming a third-rank viscount. Thankfully, Mulan Town had just been promoted to a rank 3 town, so it would still take some time for it to reach its maximum population of 1,000. Perhaps in a future battle of Southern Town Pass, Mu Lanyue would have enough merit points. Taking 10,000 steps back, if another battle was triggered during this period, all problems would be solved. Mulan Town's rapid development made the Siege Lion very envious. In the Mountain Sea Alliance, only his Black Lion Town was still a rank 2 town. Due to the lack of funds, the Siege Lion did not dare to recruit too many players to settle in the territory. This was because they could not afford the high teleportation fees. Helpless, the Siege Lion finally relented and invited Ouyang Shua to open a branch of the Bank of the Four Seas in Black Lion Town. Ouyang Shua naturally had no reason to refuse. Recently, the territory's financial situation had been improving. Just the Wolf Mountain Mine and the North Twilight Saltworks had increased their income by nearly 2,000 gold coins every month. With this additional income, it was enough for him to open a branch of the Bank of the Four Seas in Black Lion Town. Ouyang Shua replied to the Siege Lion that at the end of this month, as long as Shanghai County's funds were in place, he would send someone to Black Lion Town to open a branch of the Bank of the Four Seas. Ouyang Shua's ambition was to open the Bank of the Four Seas in the various territories. Even if it could not become the only bank in the other territories, it would control their economic lifelines. It would become one of the main banks in the other territories. To realize this ambition, the first step was to open branches of the Bank of the Four Seas in the territories of every ally. Now that they had conquered Mulan Town and Black Lion Town, it was only a matter of time before they could conquer Dragon Search Town. As for Lingxi County and Luofeng County, they needed a specific opportunity to succeed. This was especially so for Luofeng County. Even if Feng Xiaohuang agreed, her family would not. The reason why Lingxi County was still able to survive was because of the Cool Breeze Pavilion of the Supreme Court. The Cool Breeze Pavilion's gold farming team had been silently supporting the development of Lingxi County. Lingxi County and the Cool Breeze Pavilion gradually formed a symbiotic relationship. It was similar to the cooperation agreement between Shanghai County and the Snow Morning Rose Group. The only difference was that Lingxi County did not have a military industry as developed as Shanghai County. It was not that Ouyang Shuo was despicable and wanted to take advantage of his allies. After all, this was a win-win situation. It was also beneficial to the unity of the Shanghai Alliance. What alliance could be more stable than an alliance of economic integration? To be continued. Chapter 193. Night of the 24th of July. The Vanguard Battalion quietly withdrew from the northern barracks, and the 2 battalions of the Mixed Brigade followed suit. The next morning, the 2 battalions of the Mixed Brigade would go through routine drills in the northern barracks to confuse the Sky Abundant tribe. The scouts of the Sky Abundant tribe couldn't get close to the barracks and couldn't find them at all. The soldiers training in the barracks had been secretly changed. The 1st Battalion of the Vanguard Battalion left the cyan beetle horses and radiant armor in the northern barracks and changed into the spare equipment and mounts. The 4 cavalry battalions all wore the clothes of roving bandits. These clothes were all contributed by the capture bandits during the siege of the city. That's right, for this attack, they were dressed as roving bandits, because they had to pass through the grasslands and enter the depths of the basin. In order to reduce the risk of exposure, the 4 battalions would split into 4 groups and follow different routes towards the western barracks of the Sky Abundant tribe. The coordination and communication between the battalions would be done by spies from the intelligence department through hummingbirds. At the same time, the 5 companies of each battalion would split up, with each company 2 kilometers apart. The western barracks were about 160 kilometers away from the Friendship River. As a result, it would take 3 days just to get there, and this was under the premise that everything went smoothly and there were no accidents. Because it was in the grasslands, there were no hills or forests. There was no place to hide during the day at all. As a result, the cavalry didn't use the nocturnal method of marching. Instead, they marched normally. Along the way, if they met any lone nomads, they would all be killed. Lei Sun from the intelligence department led the 2nd group of spies and had already done a lot of preparation work. The 4 routes chosen by the intelligence department all went around a nomadic tribe's barracks. Ouyang Shuo went with the army, and his position was between the 2nd and 3rd companies of the 1st Battalion of the Vanguard Battalion. Following beside him and protecting him was the Lord's personal guard that had just been formed not long ago. As for Lin Yi, he led the 1st company and explored the path ahead. The 25th, 5 in the morning, the sky just brightened. 2,000 soldiers successfully crossed the Friendship River with the help of the North Sea Fleet under the morning light. After that, the 4 battalions would go their separate ways until they reached their final destination. On the first day, because they passed through the territory of the exterminated Tianlian tribe, everything went smoothly. Although this area had been taken over by the Sky Rich tribe, there were not many herdsmen stationed here. The Sky Abundant tribe only used this area as a pasture. Therefore, on this day, the overall speed of the troops was faster. Coupled with the fact that there were no infantry dragging them down, they had traveled more than 60 kilometers. At 7 o'clock in the evening, the scattered platoons regrouped and rested on the spot. The military tents and ration pills, the 2 logistics weapons, began to display their power again. When they set off in the morning, every soldier took an army pill and did not need to eat during the day. There was no need to light a fire to cook at night, which minimized the risk of exposure. As for drinking water, he had already prepared enough water in his backpack for 3 days. Apart from that, Ouyang Shuo also had a batch of drinking water in his storage pouch. Tomorrow, the troops would have to pass through the territory of a medium-sized tribe, and the danger level would increase significantly. At 5 o'clock in the morning the next day, all the platoons set off one by one, keeping a distance of 2 kilometers between them. They wanted to take advantage of the fact that there were fewer people in the early hours of the morning to cover more of the distance. At noon, Ouyang Shuo rode Black Whirlwind and hurried on with his personal guards. At this moment, a group of about 7 or 8 herdsmen appeared in front of them. They were herding a flock of sheep and seemed to be herding them. "Sir," Wang Feng, the captain of the personal guards, immediately rushed to Ouyang Shuo's side. Ouyang Shuan naturally understood Wang Feng's meaning and nodded. Wang Feng understood and made a gesture to the back. Thus, half of the personal guards immediately left the platoon and pounced on the herdsmen like a pack of hungry wolves. When the herdsmen saw the personal guards pouncing on them, they thought that they had encountered bandits and immediately fled in panic. The horses that ordinary herdsmen rode were naturally not green beetle horses. Green beetle horses were also considered a rare breed in nomadic tribes. They were not so common that even herdsmen could ride them. The personal guard's attack was very strategic. They did not directly pounce on the herdsmen, but first circled around to form an encirclement around the herdsmen to prevent them from escaping. The herdsmen who were surrounded were panic-stricken. They were mumbling something that was probably begging for mercy. As they mumbled, they kept pointing at the flock of sheep not far away. What they meant was that they could take the flock of sheep away, and they begged the heroes to spare their lives. Unfortunately, the people they encountered were not bandits who wanted to rob them, but the Shanghai County's official army. Which member of the personal guards had not experienced the baptism of blood and fire? They had long cultivated a heart of stone. All of them were expressionless as they rode on horseback and nocked their arrows. With just a volley of arrows, all the herdsmen fell off their horses. According to Ouyang Shua's original intention, he naturally did not want to hurt the innocent, especially the civilians. However, this operation was too important, and no accidents could be allowed to happen. His hands were already stained with blood. The herdsmen looked at the sharp arrows stuck in their chests with shock on their faces. They could not understand why these bandits were not like what the rumors said, that they would rob the herdsmen and not kill them. They were not willing to let them live at all, even if they were captured and taken to the bandit camp as prisoners. The personal guards did not care about the sheep that fled in all directions. Instead, they rode to the herdsmen's corpses, pulled out their tang knives, and stabbed each corpse to ensure that nothing went wrong. After that, the personal guards took out the shovels that they had prepared in advance from their backpacks and dug a large pit on the spot. They buried all the herdsmen's corpses and covered them with a layer of weeds to make a simple camouflage. At night, the relatives of the herdsmen found out that they had gone missing and did not return home. Coupled with the time they spent outside to search, even if they could successfully find a place to bury the corpses, it would probably take 1 or 2 days. Even so, it was only determined to be an attack by bandits. It could not attract the attention of the tribe's higher-ups at all. This was just a small interlude on the march. Similar things happened from time to time on the march of the 4 cavalry battalions. This set of handling methods was also drafted in advance by the military office and explained in detail to every soldier. This was the value of the military office. They were responsible for formulating very detailed battle plans, and all kinds of small details were taken into consideration as much as possible. At night, the group stopped again. Tomorrow, they would enter the territory of the Tianji tribe. The camp in the west of the town was located at the western border of the Tianji tribe. It was a full 50 kilometers away from the tent next to the Blessed Lake. After entering the Tianji tribe, they could clearly feel that there were more herdsmen. Occasionally, they would also encounter the soldiers patrolling the border in the west of the town. At this time, they would try to avoid them as much as possible. If they really could not avoid them, they could only kill them. However, this way, when the people in the west of the town were doing a head count at night, they would definitely find that some people were missing, and this would raise the alarm. However, this could not be helped. It was not easy to sneak into the hinterland of the other party, especially with a large army. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the various units stopped 10 kilometers away from the camp in the west of the town. If they continued to advance, they would enter the core area of the town in the west. Barging in like this during the day was tantamount to seeking death. In order to hide their tracks, the platoons dispersed again and hid in the herdsmen's homes. As for the original owners of the herdsmen's homes, one could imagine what happened to them. The troops of 2,000 people were like a giant beast, secretly lurking outside the camp in the west of the town, eyeing it covetously. In the evening, after the centurion in the west of the town did a routine head count, he found that some of the soldiers patrolling the border did not return to the camp on time. This situation was immediately reported to the Chiliarch, who then reported it to the commander-in-chief of the town, Rakshan. After listening to the Chiliarch's report, Rakshan frowned and asked, "Have you sent anyone to investigate?" In reply to the general, "I have already sent a 100-man team to the border to investigate. I feel that something is amiss, so I specially rushed here to report to the general." The Chiliarch did not dare to be negligent. The west of the town had not experienced any battles for many years, so it was rare for soldiers to go missing. Thinking of the Khan's previous request, Rakshan naturally did not dare to let his guard down. Pass down the order, "The entire camp is to be on alert tonight," and increase the intensity of the sentry patrols. Rakshan decided to be careful. For some reason, Rakshan had been feeling a little uneasy these past 2 days. It was as if he was being watched by a ferocious beast, but he could not see any trace of the beast. This made Rakshan very uneasy, and the disappearance of the soldiers today further exacerbated this feeling of unease. However, in front of his subordinates, Rakshan was as calm as ever. Yes, 10 kilometers away from the camp in the west of the town, there was a very inconspicuous herdsman's tent. At 6 o'clock in the evening, Lei Sun, who was disguised as a herdsman, opened the tent flap and walked in. He said respectfully, "Sir, as expected, the west of the town has indeed increased the security." It turned out that this was where Ouyang Shual was staying. Ouyang Shual nodded. The enemy's reaction was not out of his expectations. According to Lei Sun, the commander-in-chief of the town, Rakshan, was not a simple person. "Contact all the battalions. Tonight, we will act according to plan." Yes. At 7 o'clock in the evening, Ouyang Shual walked out of the tent and rode on Black Whirlwind. Under the cover of the night, under Lei Sun's guidance, he began to inspect each camp. Every time they stopped at a station, Ouyang Shual would take out barrel after barrel of fierce kerosene from his storage pouch and distribute it to the soldiers. In the grassland in July, the stars twinkled in the night sky, and the cool monsoon wind blew waves of green. Under the starlight, groups of cavalrymen walked out of the herdsmen's tents one after another and placed barrels of fierce fire oil on the backpacks of the warhorses. The backpacks had been specially modified, and each side could hold 2 barrels of fierce fire oil. To be continued. Chapter 194. The cavalrymen of Shanghai County got on their horses and began to sneak into the hinterland of the western part of the town. When the cavalrymen set off, it was already 9 o'clock at night. They could only make out their surroundings with the help of the faint starlight. Coupled with the cover of the weeds, it was difficult to tell whether it was a human figure or something else. As the 100-man team that was sent out to investigate returned empty-handed, the commander-in-chief of the western part of the town issued another order to enforce martial law. The patrolling soldiers in the western part of the town had received orders from the commander-in-chief twice to increase their vigilance. However, there was not even a trace of a ghost that night. They couldn't help but let their guard down and yawn incessantly. Coupled with the fact that there had been no war in recent years, the Tianji tribe was used to being the king of the grasslands, so the soldiers couldn't help but slack off a little. The disappearance during the day was also interpreted as an accident. Perhaps the patrolling soldiers had sneaked into a girl's tent to have some fun. The patrolling soldiers ridiculed each other while flirting with each other to pass the time. Sigh, don't you guys think that the marshal is being too cautious? He only lost a few patrolling soldiers, yet he's making such a big fuss. Our brothers have to suffer outside in the middle of the night. A soldier complained. "Bastard, how dare you speak ill of the marshal? Do you have a death wish?" The decurion leading the team reprimanded the soldier. Rakshan's prestige in the western part of the town was very high, so he had to be careful with his words. The soldier also knew that he had said the wrong thing in the spur of the moment. Fortunately, the decurion was his good friend, so he laughed and said, "Captain, I know I was wrong. Please don't report it." The military rules of the grasslands were very strict and could even be considered cruel. If someone really took this matter seriously, then this soldier would not be able to bear the consequences. A whipping of the horse would definitely cause him to run. Don't worry, the Decurion didn't want to make a fuss. There were many mosquitoes on the grasslands in July, and it was especially difficult to endure. Fortunately, these soldiers were quite dedicated. Although they complained incessantly, they didn't leave their posts without permission. Not far from them, the Shanghai County cavalrymen dismounted and held the reins in their hands. Like a group of ghosts, they slowly approached the patrolling soldiers in the western part of the town. After entering the effective shooting range, the cavalrymen squatted on the ground and tried their best to hide their tracks. They drew their bows and nocked their arrows, killing the patrolling soldiers one by one without making any sound. The cavalrymen leading the charge were all elites of the various battalions. Their archery skills were outstanding. As for sticking close to them and assassinating them at close range, it was almost impossible in the grasslands. The soldiers guarding the western perimeter of the town were constantly being eliminated. 5 kilometers away from the western camp, the security here was raised to another level. Furthermore, the sounds of fighting could easily alert the camp. Therefore, the cavalry of Shanghai County stopped advancing. Ouyang Shuo rode on Black Whirlwind, gazing at the western town barracks in the distance. Because it was a permanent camp, the western town main camp was not like the previous Tianpiao tribe, which only had tents arranged in circles to form a defense. The camp in the western part of the town was no different from the camps in the Chinese plains. There was a tall wooden wall around it, and there were archery towers at the 4 corners. There was only a door at the south. With just 2,000 cavalrymen, it was impossible to take down such a camp. They could only fight in the wilderness. Moreover, the nomadic tribes were best at fighting in the wild. According to the intelligence, there were 5,000 cavalrymen in the western part of the town. 1,000 of them were heavy cavalry, and the rest 4,000 were light cavalry. Nomadic tribes would usually send light cavalry to lure the enemy, and then surround the enemy from the flanks. At the critical moment, the heavy cavalry would charge in and crush the enemy, deciding the outcome of the battle. The cavalrymen got off their horses and started setting up an oil formation in front of the western town barracks. This was Lin Yi's strategy: lure the enemy out of the camp, and then use the oil to form a fire barrier to stop the enemy from chasing. After the preparations were done, everyone retreated. 28th of July, 6 in the morning. The 1st Battalion of the Vanguard was tasked with luring the enemy, and under Lin Yi's lead, they marched towards the western camp. All the guards along the way were shot down cleanly. Rakshan, who hadn't had a good night's sleep, woke up early. Before he could react, he received a report from a guard. "Commander, there's a group of bandits south of the camp. There's about 500 of them, and they're attacking the camp." Rakshan paused in disbelief. "You're talking about bandits? And there's only 500 of them. Who gave them the guts to attack our camp?" The guard didn't dare to be negligent, and replied with a serious face. "Yes, Commander. 500 bandits. Let's go." Rakshan decided to take a look himself. Rakshan climbed up the archer tower of the camp and looked over. As expected, he saw a group of troops dressed like bandits, wiping out the guards on the perimeter. They were whistling non-stop, and their expressions were extremely arrogant. Rakshan couldn't tolerate this kind of naked provocation. He ordered a 1,000-man commander to lead his troops out of the camp and teach these arrogant bandits a lesson. The 1,000-man commander, Huha, received the order and was extremely excited. From his point of view, defeating the bandits in front of him was a piece of cake. This was a free reward. It seemed like the commander thought highly of him. 1,000 light cavalry shot out of the camp, like a sharp arrow. Who would have thought that the bandits were a bunch of cowards? They looked good, but were useless. When they saw the charging cavalry, they immediately turned around and ran away like a flock of sheep. They looked extremely pathetic. Relying on the speed advantage of the cyan beetle horses, Huha didn't give up. He immediately led his troops and chased after them. On the archer tower of the camp, Arisi, the advisor of the western town, looked at the gradually disappearing Gay division from his sight with a face full of confusion. He turned his head and said to Rakshan, "Commander, the situation doesn't seem right." These bandits came and left in a strange manner. Could it be a trap? Rakshan nodded. It's a little unusual. Order the rest of the troops to be on standby. With Huha's ability, even if the enemy is tricked, he should be able to retreat safely. Understood. On the other side, Huha led his troops and chased for over 10 kilometers. They were about to catch up to the bandits. Suddenly, two groups of bandits charged out from the sides and immediately surrounded Gue division. Oh no, it's a trap. Huha immediately became alert. He knew that he had fallen into the enemy's ambush. Unfortunately, his troops were advancing at a high speed and couldn't stop for a while. The two groups of cavalrymen flanking him were like two sharp blades that pierced into the center of Gue division from both sides. Facing the light cavalry of the nomadic tribes, Ouyang Shua wasn't stupid enough to compete with them in archery. Instead, he engaged in close combat. He used the advantages of the Tang blade and the armor to attack the enemy's weakness. The light cavalry of the nomadic tribes didn't have any defensive abilities. They only wore simple leather armor. Facing the Tang blade, it was almost a fatal strike. The sharp Tang blade easily cut open the enemy's leather armor. Every strike of the blade pierced the enemy's flesh. A chaotic battle ensued. With great difficulty, the Gue division began to stabilize their position and prepared to fight a tough battle with the enemy. At that moment, Lin Yi's men turned around and surrounded Bai's men. Huha immediately knew that there was nothing he could do. He decisively ordered his troops to retreat. Unfortunately, Ouyang Shua didn't give him the chance to retreat. 2,000 cavalrymen of Shanghai County madly chased after Gue division. Blood dyed the grassland red. The neighing of the war horses resounded through the sky. After an hour of crazy killing, there were less than 200 people left of Gue division. They protected Huha and escaped from the encirclement. They fled toward the west side of the town's main camp. The cavalrymen of Shanghai County were still chasing after them. It seemed like they wanted to kill them all. Unfortunately, they were limited by the war horses. The distance between the two sides grew further and further, allowing Huha to escape successfully. Hua's escape was the result of Ouyang Shua's indulgence. Ouyang Shua's intention was to completely enrage Rakshan and lure the entire west side of the town out of the camp. The two groups, one chasing and the other escaping, quickly returned to the west side of the town's main camp. As expected, when Rakshan saw the fleeing Gue division and the bandits chasing after them, he couldn't help but be enraged. He shouted, "How dare you!" As he spoke, he immediately ran down the arrow tower and mounted his mount. It was a commander-level green beetle horse. He shouted, "Everyone follow me and attack. We will support Huha and eliminate the bandits. Kill." The 4,000 cavalrymen of the west side of the town were ready to go. When Huha saw the reinforcements, he was overjoyed. He patted the green beetle horse under him and ran straight to the camp. On the other hand, Ouyang Shua's army stopped and prepared to leave. Before leaving, Lin Yi used his inner force and shouted, "Rakshan, you little thief. Today, I will teach you a lesson. The next time you come, I will definitely take your head." As he spoke, he laughed loudly. He was extremely arrogant. Rakshan had never been humiliated like this before. Without saying anything, he led his troops and continued to chase after Huha. Although Huha had already told him about his encounter, Rakshan didn't believe that his opponents would have troops lying in ambush. Even if they did, with the 4,000 elite soldiers under his command, he had nothing to fear. On the prairie, the chase and the other escaping played out again. However, the pursuers and the escapees changed directions again. At this moment, the advantage of the green beetle horse's speed was fully displayed. In less than 10 minutes, Rakshan's troops would catch up and bring the enemies into his firing range. Looking at the fleeing enemies, Rakshan's expression was cold. It was as if he was looking at a group of dead people. Unfortunately, at this moment, Rakshan didn't know that they had already fallen into the meticulously planned trap of Shanghai County. He saw Lin Yi riding on the back of his horse. He took out a special arrow and lit it with a flint. Then, he turned his body on the horse's back and shot a fire arrow behind him. The fire arrow flew across the sky and accurately landed in the area where Rakshan's troops were. In an instant, the fire arrow ignited the fierce fire oil that had been poured on the grassland. The fierce fire oil formation this time wasn't in the shape of a long strip. Instead, the entire area was poured with fierce fire oil. With the help of the strong wind and the wild grass, the blazing flames engulfed Rakshan's troops in an instant. To be continued. Chapter 195. Amidst the raging flames, the helpless warriors let out tragic cries. Their bodies were covered in flames. When they fell from their horses into the sea of fire, they were instantly burnt to a crisp. The flames burned the grass, causing thick smoke to billow, suffocating people. Even with the strength of the green beetle horse, after being attacked by the flames and smoke, it became panicked. The war horses were like headless flies in the thick smoke, bumping around without any sense of direction. The tight formation made it easy for the war horses to collide with their companions, causing both sides to be injured. The moment the flames ignited, Rakshan's face turned pale. He had a premonition that the enemy in front of him was definitely not some roving bandits. A huge conspiracy shrouded the sky above the sky order tribe. At the crucial moment, he had to take responsibility. He had to do his best to bring his men out of the flames and back to the Sky Order tribe's main camp. Rakshan was riding a leader-level green beetle horse, an existence that surpassed the purple gold rank like a divine beast. The green beetle horse neighed and was the first to charge out of the ring of flames. The other green beetle horses followed their leader's cry and charged out together. The moment Rakshan charged out, he once again felt despair. The cunning of the enemy was beyond his imagination. Outside the flames, the enemy's 2,000 cavalry were waiting in formation. At this moment, their faces no longer had the exaggerated insolence or wretchedness from before. Instead, they were expressionless and cold. In an instant, Rakshan guessed that the enemy was a regular army like them. Just as Rakshan stuck his head out, he was met with a rain of arrows. The dense rain of arrows mercilessly harvested the lucky ones who charged out of the flames. They had originally thought that escaping from the flames would be escaping from hell. Who would have thought that escaping from one hell to another was just escaping from hell? The continuous attacks drained the morale and courage of the soldiers in the western part of the town. The lucky ones who escaped the rain of arrows did not dare to have any other thoughts. They fled pathetically without any will to fight. Even Rakshan, who had escaped once again with a leader-level green beetle horse, did not think of forming an army to fight against the enemy. He only rode the green beetle horse and quickly fled towards the blessed lake. The cavalry of Shanghai County did not chase after the last lucky ones. A cornered beast will fight, and a cornered enemy will not be pursued. For the sake of survival, the survivors would erupt with unimaginable strength. Ouyang Shua didn't want to touch this group of injured wild beasts after achieving his objective in a situation where he had the upper hand and was in a disadvantageous position. It would only increase the casualties of his side for no reason. In the end, less than 1,000 of the 5,000 soldiers in the west managed to escape. Ouyang Shua no longer cared about the raging flames that were still burning. He led his troops around the raging flames and went straight to the western camp to harvest his spoils of war. At this time, the remaining guards of the camp had already fled without a trace. The elite cavalrymen of the nomadic tribes were usually equipped with 3 horses, 2 war horses, and 1 pack horse. Pack horses were specially used to carry things. The 2 war horses were used in rotation to increase the mobility of the cavalry. This was because a war horse would consume a lot of energy when carrying a heavy load and would easily lose weight. Thus, it was very expensive. Generally speaking, a war horse would need a rest for a while after galloping for 20 kilometers. At this time, if there were 2 horses taking turns, they would naturally be able to achieve continuous rapid marching. Shanghai County had yet to engage in super long-distance battles. Hence, the cavalrymen were only equipped with 1 war horse. At most, It would be like the 1st Battalion of the Vanguard Battalion. Since they were equipped with green beetle horses, the horses gifted by the system when they changed professions could be used as backup horses or used as pack horses. As for the Cavalry Battalion of the Mixed Brigade, since they had changed professions from roving bandits to begin with, even if they weren't equipped with green beetle horses, they still had 2 war horses. As for the 2nd Battalion of the Vanguard Battalion and the Cavalry Battalion of the Poolwater County, they only had 1 war horse gifted by the system. Overall, compared to the nomadic tribes, the cavalrymen of Shanghai County were still too shabby. Strictly speaking, the cavalrymen needed at least 2 auxiliary soldiers, one to take care of the horses and the other to carry the bags. In order to simplify things in the game, by default, there was no need for auxiliary soldiers. The cavalrymen would take care of everything by themselves. The spoils of war that Ouyang Shuo was referring to were the war horses that were left in the western camp to be used in rotation. As expected, there were 5,000 green beetle horses and 5,000 ordinary pack horses in the stable of the camp, in addition to the 1,000 green beetle horses that were collected during the cleanup of the battlefield. In this battle, they had obtained a total of 6,000 green beetle horses, which was a huge fortune. According to the calculation of 5 gold coins for 1 green beetle horse, it would be 30,000 gold coins. In addition to the pack horses, the total value was more than 40,000 gold coins. Most importantly, these green beetle horses were priceless. Other than that, Ouyang Shuo also found 5,000 composite bows in the armory of the camp. With this batch of bows, Ouyang Shuo wanted to achieve 100% of the soldiers in Shanghai County being equipped with bows. After this battle, the shortage of war horses in Shanghai County would be greatly filled. The price that they had to pay was the death of 150 cavalrymen. Because they had to travel a long distance, Ouyang Shuo could only order to bury the dead soldiers on the spot. The Sky Order tribe had already become a place of trouble, and it was not advisable to stay for long. The troops changed into green beetle horses and drove the remaining horses to the west. The direction of the retreat had been decided long ago. The troops could not retreat to the south, as it would easily expose the location of Shanghai County. They could not retreat to the north either, as it would bring trouble to Milan town. They could not retreat to the east, as the Sky Order tribe was still stationed in the east. Therefore, they could only retreat to the west. The vast group of horses could not cover their tracks at all. They could only rely on the speed of the green beetle horses to quickly retreat from the grassland before the Sky Order tribe and the other tribes could react. Because each cavalryman had 2 green beetle horses in rotation, the troops had traveled more than 80 kilometers before nightfall. Compared to the speed when they came, it was an order of magnitude higher. The next day, at 5 in the morning, the troops set off again. After a day of rapid marching, they directly traveled more than 100 kilometers, completely out of the grassland area occupied by the nomadic tribes and into the wilderness. At this time, Ouyang Shuo finally felt relieved. When the troops marched during the day, they had encountered the nomadic tribes' patrol troops, and they were directly dealt with. However, the direction of their retreat was also exposed, and it was a good chance to set up a diversion. On the 3rd day, the troops turned south and finally arrived at the upper reaches of the Friendship River before nightfall. At this time, the North Sea Fleet had already been waiting there for a long time. The reason why the North Sea Fleet could accurately grasp the direction of the troops' retreat was the Military Intelligence Department's hummingbirds. These little fellows provided by the Mystic Bird tribe looked inconspicuous, but in fact, they were very useful. With the help of the North Sea Fleet, the troops smoothly crossed the Friendship River, and at this time, they were finally completely safe. There were no forces that could threaten them on the banks of the Friendship River. No matter how big the bandit camp was, in front of the huge cavalry troops of Shanghai County, they could not resist. As for the players' territories, as long as Ouyang Shuo did not provoke them, they should be burning incense and praying to Buddha. How would they dare to come out and cause trouble? After crossing the river, the North Sea Fleet would rest by the riverbank for the night, and the next morning, they would go along the river and return to the North Seaport Station. Recently, Pei Donglai had been stepping up the training of the troops planning to counterattack Moon Island. After crossing the Friendship River, the troops walked for a full 2 days before returning to Shanghai County at 5:30 in the afternoon on the second day of August. All in all, this wildfire operation had taken up a week's time. It really wasn't easy to travel such a long distance. After returning, before the Vanguard Battalion could rest and reorganize, they were driven back to the North Camp by Ouyang Shuo to replace the 2 battalions of the Mixed Brigade. On the way back, they did not know how much this wildfire operation had caused in the grassland. Ouyang Shuo was really worried about the North Camp. When the Vanguard Battalion returned, they did not bring a single green beetle horse. Of the 6,000 green beetle horses, 500 were left for the Mixed Brigade Cavalry Battalion, and the Pool Water Cavalry Battalion took another 500. As for the remaining 5,000, 3,000 were temporarily kept at the farm on the west side of the city, and the last 2,000 will be sent to the Storm Valley Military Horse Farm to expand the breeding scale of the military horse farm. Ouyang Shuo was not extravagant enough to give a cavalry 2 green beetle horses. In his plan, the green beetle horses were mainly used for charging, and usually the cavalry would still ride on the original war horses. As for the 5,000 pack horses, Ouyang Shuo was going to hand them over to the carriage office. The carriages had been manufactured long ago, but without the horses, it was useless. Because of this matter, the chief of the carriage office, Zheng Shanpao, had been pestering Ouyang Shuo. Now it was all settled in one go. As they landed in the county, it was a full 5 kilometers from the Lord's Mansion to the North Gate. If they walked, it would take an hour. Therefore, it was imperative to develop the city's public transportation, which was horse carriages. With this batch of pack horses, the carriage office could consider setting up a carriage company in the city to solve all these problems. After returning, Ouyang Shuo first went to the armory and stored the 5,000 composite bows. As for the distribution of the composite bows, the military office would naturally be in charge, and he did not need to worry. It was already 6 o'clock when he returned to the Lord's Mansion. Ouyang Shuo did not return to the office and walked towards the backyard. "Brother, you're back." Bingner's eyes were sharp, and she saw Ouyang Shuo at a glance. She wanted to run over and let Ouyang Shuo hug her. This could be considered the longest period of time that Ouyang Shuo had been away from Bingner in recent years. The little girl naturally missed him and asked every day when her brother would come back. After going out for a week, Ouyang Shuo was covered in dust and his body was dirty. Although the blood had been wiped away, it definitely did not smell good. In this state, how would he dare to hug Bingner? He hurriedly stopped her and said, "Darling, brother is too dirty. Let brother wash up first, and then I'll accompany you to eat, okay?" Bingner came over and sniffed, and there was indeed a strange smell. She said crisply, "Smelly." Ouyang Shuo smiled bitterly, and suddenly reached out his hand and pinched her tender face, leaving a stain. Before Bingner could react, he turned and ran. To be continued. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.